p.m. Make your voices be heard. Call us, text us. Kaieteur Radio 99.1, 99.5 FM. The Wake Up Guyana Show.
Yes, hello, good afternoon, welcome once again. Well, let me just start back here. It's the last day of the year. We are allowed to do wrong things right here in the studio. So says Raj. And Raj, I hope that you're having a very good day because we intend to make it very good for you as we wind down and we take things down to the next level. Today is a very special day. I'm not sure whether you should be saying happy old years, whether we should say good riddance to the bad old 2020, but definitely we do happen to have a lot of hopes for the new year 2021. It's going to be here within hours, and many people are hoping that we could learn from the lessons of 2020. It would have been a year characterized by lots of ups and downs, very hard times for many Guyanese, thousands of Guyanese, and of course, right around the world, people would have been affected by the pandemic that would have been attacking us as a result of its start right there in China. It spread across the world very rapidly. By March in Guyana, we had our very first case. At the same time, we were dealing with COVID 19. COVID 19, sorry, we were also dealing with elections 2020. So many things to talk about as we go down on this very last show of the year on the Wake Up Guyana. I want to say before we do anything that I want to say we welcome you to this show. We welcome you. We thank you for staying with us, for bearing with us right through. You know, we weren't trained officially on this radio here. We did what we had to do. That's because we had to bring the news to you, and it was a learning process. It was a learning curve. We don't have anything to hide in this radio or this newspaper that we have right here. It is a place where we just share the news with you, and we share it to you as it is. There's no holes barred. There isn't anything, no icing on the cake that we give to you. However it goes, that's how the way you're going to get it. And throughout this 2020, we would have seen the evolving of Kaieteur Radio right here. And, before we say anything and do anything else, and we have some guests coming very, very shortly, they are the top reporters of Kaieteur News. They are going to be, walking us through some of the highlights of 2020, some of the things that made the news, some of their experiences. We would have, in a very short while in the studio too, we'd have folks like Joshua Van Slightman telling us about, growing up literally in this radio here, and dealing with it, and being with the people every single day. People tune in with us right here on Kaieteur Radio. So we want to say thank you very much for being with us. If you're now joining us, this is the Wake Up Guyana show right here on Kaieteur Radio. We're coming to you live from our Saffron Street studio, Charlestown, Georgetown, and you could get us on 99.1 in Essequibo, Demerara. If you're in Berbice, it's 99.5. If you're on Facebook, it's Kaieteur Radio on Facebook, or Kaieteur Radio live stream on YouTube. While we're setting up our system right here on Kaieteur Radio, we should also tell you that next year it is going to be a very busy year when it comes to news in Guyana. It is a year where you're going to see a lot of activities with regards to oil. You're going to see a lot of projects being unveiled and a lot of projects started. This country is going to see some changes that's beyond anything that we would have ever imagined or witnessed. You're seeing a country that is developing into a first world country based on the development that physical infrastructure, among other things. You're going to see probably a start on a new Demerara Harbour Bridge. You're going to see a start on the East Bank Road, an alternative bypass that is going to give us some kind of relief from the congestion that has been affecting us over the years. I could tell you also that the East Bank congestion, you're not going to see an immediate relief within the next 2 3 years. That's because the project is going to take us as long as that. So we have to really be on our how you say it. We have to be guarded. We have to be prepared to deal with some hardship in our country here because there is going to be heightened activities. We are going to see influx of more of the migrants coming into this country. We're going to see more hardships when it comes to dealing with regulatory matters, when it comes to the oil, when it comes to collection of our revenues. Our police force is going to be challenged. Our army is going to have to be challenged also to take up a different mandate. So wherever you are, whatever it is that you're doing today, it's the last day of the year, and I want to say to you, a happy 2020 to you because we're saying goodbye to it. It has not been an easy time for the majority of us. For some people, made a lot of money. Supermarkets and so on would have made a lot of money. For others, it would have been a lot of persons would have lost their job. Looking forward to 2021, we hoping that things are going to see a reverse. The worrisome thing on the horizon is the changing face of the COVID-19 coronavirus. We're seeing that there are different strains being introduced, at least in Europe, and the US would have recorded some cases of that. So we are going to be we have to look at that because COVID has played such a big part of our life this year, or rather the negative side of things. But for some, it has been very positive. We could probably talk a little bit that. What we are going to tell you right now, we will, as a normal, as a part of the housekeeping, head into some of the big stories that made the news in our newspaper today, Guyana's largest selling newspaper, and we will close off the year making sure that we continue to do, having a habit and just working on that habit constantly. It sometimes is good. Constant is good. So let us see what happens in our Kaieteur newspaper of today, December 21st, 31st, 2020, Thursday's edition of the Kaieteur News, Guyana's largest selling daily and New York's most popular weekly. Bandits hijack a taxi, drive away with passenger. And this goes to show around this period here, be very, very careful. Keep your eyes peeled. Make sure that you are aware of your surroundings, who wrong you. And if you're going to pick up strangers, make sure that you have some kind of backup plan, especially taxi drivers, that you protect yourself. Do not put yourself in harm's way. If they say give you the car, give them the car, give them the car. But it is a situation that's raised its head around this holiday period. It seems to be an issue that we have to deal with. So Vice President Barjagdi Guyana to audit in excess of $6 billion more of Exxon's costs. And we would have been talking about some of the big costs that Exxon has given to us here. And so we have to audit that. And could we disclose or sometime or the other that some of the costs that were handed to us that they may not necessarily have been what was expended. So Exxon, we are going to see some action on this next year. The government has promised that because they're not too happy with some of the expenditure that would have been handed to us. Opposition wants temporary help workers hired by Waldo Lawrence to be paid. Health Ministry says no payment until employment contracts are provided. So we were hiring people and not give them a contract. Which part of the government are we dealing with? Which part of this arrangement that we have that the government of the day would hire people, not give them a contract, but you expect the government to honor payments. How do you do that? How do you treat workers like that? Because you're taking them on and they expect their payments. There's nothing wrong with collecting their payments. So when you don't pay them, and the government is not obligated or not mandated to pay anybody because you don't have a contract, who does business like that? Which government does business like that? Do you want a government that do business like that? This government on their finale has to be very, very careful. Make sure that they close all these loopholes as they go forward with this country. We cannot be running business like when it's a cake shop and having a verbal arrangement or whatever arrangements that they would have had. If you don't have a contract with somebody, then you might as well say you don't have a job. That's a legal document that says you were to be paid under what conditions and so on. So you hire a bunch of people, expect them to work. Yes, it was needed. That is an argument that it was a COVID time. You need to hire these additional people to do some work to protect our country. And you move forward and you hired scores, dozens of them, and then you can't pay them because there's nothing that you have there to prove that they were working and so on. There's no contract, so I'm not sure what happened here, but that's not something that we're looking at. There's a big news coming out from the police force, and that is one senior cop has taken. I think Mr. Brutus has taken the police force to the police service commission to court, um, uh, and he is saying that. That his the police promotion should not go ahead because he was treated unfairly. That matter is in effect would likely, unless it's being disposed of today, hold up the year end, the traditional year end promotions of policemen and women. And I understand that the five senior police personnel who were to get some serious promotions, assistant commissioners post. I understand one of them is supposed to be Blanham, Wendell Blanham, and he is the crime chief. I think Commander Watts of the West Denver area, they were supposed to be assistant commissioner there too, and a couple of others. I think Mr. Cooper is one of them too, and a couple of others as well. I can't put my names. I can't really get out those names. So what we do know is a cop is in custody after robbing a sleeping man. Apparently, works a vehicle and was bringing on one of his drinking buddies and decided to rob him. The man awoke, and then he managed to jump in his car and drive. But he drove straight into a trench, lost control there. So he is in deep trouble in police custody right now for trying to rob. And this is a serving member of the force. Remember, we talk about culture in the police force and we talk about so many other things. These are the issues that we have to pay attention to. CARICOM or to rely on COVID measures as rich nations hoard vaccines. BPAT, this is something we have to pay attention because if we don't get the vaccines very, very early, it could arrest our march to put this virus behind us as quickly as possible. What we do know is that a couple of rich countries they are moving ahead, and they have bought these vaccines or they've committed those vaccines to themselves at the detriment of us. And so there's something that we're working to overcome. We expected this, but it's still a bigger hurdle that we'll have to face as we move forward. BPAT's the Bill Marriott Four-Point Sheraton Hotel and Resort near CGIA. And this is another one on top of, I think, another family would have announced that they are doing it as well. So it's good. It's good for development. Local people are taking the opportunity, and we will be needing these rooms here. International Men's Day. Demerara Harbor Bridge boss used $900,000 company funds to gift himself gold bracelets. Story made its way yesterday. The audit report finds. So we'll have to pay attention to that because the story is coming out. Um, One part of the story that came out is that there was a bridge, and so there was you could buy the what you call it, the asphalt from the company, but when you buy it, you don't weigh it there. You go elsewhere and weigh it. So you drive out with a truck with the office, anybody take the money. They have to account for it. You just can't take the taxpayers' dollars. Why people are struggling? Why people are struggling for $25,000? And you take it and you're not accounting for it in a proper manner or doing what you feel like. Is it your bank account? No, it is not. Um, so very quickly, let's go to our newspaper here. Um, Let us see. Court appeals 88-year sentence for old years old murder of ex-girlfriend. The BPAT company cop in custody for robbing sleeping man. We did talk about that. There's a case that is breaking. I understand that a man has disappeared, and they've issued an arrest warrant for somebody who was very close to him. They found the cops went after family would have gone to the house, found blood stains on the house, no signs on the body. That's something in the Kurukuru area there. Woman sets out on fire after argument. St. Francis. Let me see what else. So big story that's happening. There was another big story that we should pay attention to. It is Britain. Britain has pulled out of the European Union, and I think this morning, in a ceremonial fashion, you see the list, the long lines of flag. They would have removed the flag there, so it is a done deal. Let's see where England, Britain goes from here. Does it open some opportunities for us? Because we would have been trading with them. Guyana thinks so. So this is a developing story right here in Guyana and around the world with regards to Britain's pull out from the European Union there. We would have been selling sugar and lumber and a whole host of other items to England as well as to Europe as well. So we'd have to continue to pay attention to these areas here. So wherever you are, whatever it is that you're doing, we are winding down on that side of that aspect of the news right now. We will tell you. We start, while I wait my colleagues while they come up for us to look back at the year 2020, and we look forward to the year 2020 in just a little while, just after 2 o'clock or so thereabouts. We should be getting on to. Um, Freddy Kissoon. Freddy Kissoon is not coming into the studio, but he has said that he's willing to talk to us about what would have transpired in 2020 and some of the things that that he paid attention to and what would have what he would have sat up and take some notice. And Freddie would have had the studio here very hot during the early days of the elections. Fiasco. It's a fiasco that we would have had in Guyana, a place that Guyana should never have gone back to. So I am going to ask my boy right now to maybe get hold of Freddie, and while I wait my people, um, I could probably let me give it to him, and then we could probably start with Freddie and wait on my other colleagues to appear. I think they're all around the place, and let's see what happens. Um, so I'm going to ask him to make a connection with Freddie there, and we could probably have a chat with him in the meantime. Freddy Kissoon, to talk about the year 2020 and some of the things that stood out to him in his minds and his analysis that he could bring forward to the Guyanese people. He takes these things and strips it apart. But there's some big things that we should be talking about this year here. COVID-19, it would have been with us. Elections 2020. Of course, we would have had the Henry boys. We would have had racism played a very big role. We would have had the ERC, land controversy, the role of the ERC and the issues that you had with the ERC and the credibility. To recall a few days back, it was the president who would have talked about the ERC, and he was very unhappy with the ERC not standing up when it's supposed to stand up, and he wants the ERC to play a bigger role in this country here and fulfill its mandate. Behavior of our politicians over the last couple months or the last 2 years, because you could recall it was December the 21st, 2018. Just a few days back, we celebrated just 2 years since we would have had that no confidence motion. Since then, we would have seen some behavior coming from our politicians that leaves much to be desired. We, the people of Guyana, are looking very, very seriously to some professionalism, to some behavior that would spell people that of quality that people could look up to, people could emulate in this country of ours. So it is some very serious time. This is this year that has passed us, the last couple of months. It has brought out some ugliness from our people, from some politicians, from our leaders. That is something that we should hope in the new year that we don't see. We would have also see issue with schooling because of the COVID-19, a big issue for many parents and the authorities as well. Of course, I think for me, one of the biggest thing was the utilities, and of course, social benefits. And we're going to talk a little about that because we've been exposed we've been exposed to our nakedness, if you will, with regards to what our people are going through, the absence of NIS or the bad or poor services at NIS there. We would have seen the Human Services Ministry right now is trying to revamp a couple of things going forward. We should have better old age pension for people, better medical benefits. We should be looking forward to better benefits when it comes to NIS. These are all demands that we should be making to the authorities come 2021. Of course, we were also looking at the utilities and their performance, and GT&T came on under some severe criticisms. Those criticisms are not going away. The good thing about it is that the government would have raised or removed the the monopoly that GT&T had, allowing other companies now to come into the country to introduce new services, including faster internet. This was one of the big things that played out this year, and we know come next year, we know that the e-networks is working very quickly to put in the fiber right now. It's landed the cable. Um, and of course, as we go forward, we all have to be discussing that. Do we have Freddie on the air? He's on air right now? Okay, we are going to be calling Freddie while we do that. But in the meantime, we could probably read some messages coming in from our people here. You could send the message to 6222222, or you could also be sending, calling us in a very, well, let's don't open the lines right now because we will have to open it eventually. But let's have our discussion, get out of the way, and then maybe we could talk to our people, maybe have some of the things, talk to them about what are some of the things that they could look forward to coming into the new year, what they expect the government to do, what are some of the priorities for government, how do you rate the government's performance since they're taking up office in August? So these are all issues that we have to deal with as we go forward in this beautiful country of ours in 2021. Lots of hopes, lots of regrets for 2020, but there are also some things that would be coming out. We would have seen some hardships from 2020 that would have taught our people some lessons. We would have to one. Yes, good afternoon. We're trying to get on to Freddy Kissoon.
Just hold a minute, please.
Thank you. So in the meantime, while we wait on Freddie there, Freddie so graciously, I think he's in his kitchen somewhere cooking. If he doesn't know how to cook, I'm sure that he's eating. Freddie is a big one. Freddie loves to eat. Freddie would I gotta ask him. He promised me a burger, but
Hello?
Freddie, you promised me a burger a couple years now, and you haven't been able to fulfill that. Is there ever time?
Yes, I bought it. You didn't get it?
No, sir.
No,
We
well,
will.
you got to ask Mr. Lal about that.
I have to ask Mr. Lalo
Yeah,
about the burger.
I give him it to give you.
Okay, Freddy Kissoon. Freddy, we did speak. We have with us here our columnist of Kaieteur News, Freddy Kissoon, would have been with us for long years, many years, even before I was born. So he's a very ancient character, but he has a lot of knowledge
Uh,
also.
uh, um, a troglodyte.
A what?
A troglodyte.
That's a big word. You would have to explain that. I see you've been using a lot of big words over the years. Sometimes you have people box in the dictionary. Do you go to the dictionary? It comes naturally to you.
No comment.
All right, Freddie, I will leave that because I don't want to put you in the spot today. Today, you happen to be in.
It is. Um, When you were around in the 70s and you saw what Mr. Burnham was doing with elections, and when those elections were over, Mr. Burnham ruled as a dictator. Then, when you saw Mingo doing that, the word crucial and distressing and disturbing are irrelevant. It's like it's the end of the world. You know, Leonard, in the history of the world, people rob stores, they rob banks, but no robbers will run into a police station anywhere in the world to rob that station because it's commonsensical. There are policemen there, they're armed, there are lots of people in the station. You don't rig an election. The world is watching in an age where people hold their phone, and you've seen in Afghanistan where this guy counting votes in Guyana, and the opposition party say, no, that is not the figure we have from the results, and there's the U.S. ambassador saying, but we have the statements of poll. What are you reading, sir? And this went on for 5 months, Leonard Gildarie. Do you know what that has done to Guyana? That has damaged people's psyche, especially those in their 60s. It has sent pessimistic shivers down the spine of young people who, with the oil find, looking for Guyana to take off and exceed Jamaica and Trinidad and Barbados, our big sisters in the CARICOM. That thing almost destroyed Guyana, and I lived under Burnham. Mr. Burnham was far more astute than that. The next day, you don't know about the count. You don't know what's going on with the election. Mr. Burnham said there were threats on the ballot box. The things are being counted in the GDF headquarters. Politicians, diplomats, they are nonplussed. They don't know what's going on. And Mr. Burnham said, look, we're inviting you at Gildarie to look at the counts, and he switched the ballot boxes. At least there is some level of thinking. So you want to know, you see the ballot box mark, Myconi Primary School, but that's not the real ballot box. So they went at some length to fool people. This guy, this chief election officer, in an election in the 21st century, declared 6 different results. It was a near elimination of us as a nation state in the global nation, in the global map.
I want to ask you,
It's bad
Freddy.
as that.
I want to ask you, as an analyst, as somebody who's been writing over this year, over the years, would you say that what you saw played out, like you talk about 6 declarations, was it something that you expected that would have happened? That these you could you say that because of the people of the animal in them, that that's what you expected?
No, I thought we had left. I thought we had left that world behind. I mean, Leonard, both you and I have grew up very poorly, and then we went and we got our high school. Well, we got our GC. I didn't go to high school. I got my GC privately. And when you come now and you graduate and you begin to work, you expect that there will be a chair. You expect there will be a desk in the workplace. You expect there will be a flushing toilet in the workplace. When the PPP were doing excessive things under their presidents, we had thought that we had, found we were on a horizon of change. That this was a new PNC. You had some new people called the AFC. Conscientiously, Leonard, I can't say I expected this in 2015. Around 2016, I saw, and my columns took went in a drastically different direction. I saw in 2016 that there were attempts, that this was a new PNC, this was not a new PNC, and there were attempts to bring back the 70s under Burnham.
What were some of the warning signs?
I'll give you them. I'll give you about 5 of them. One, the election results itself in 2015. My monitoring of those elections on the ground and talking to people is I am still unconvinced about the election results of 2015. To my mind, either the PPP won it in a narrow way or the PPP lost by a few hundred votes. And that really shook up the PNC leadership. They then said, if we had the AFC with us and we couldn't win, I'm not too sure they won in 2015, but I'm not prepared to say they have lost. If we couldn't win in 2015, I don't see how we could win again. And they knew on their own they couldn't win. So one, that was the first indication. Secondly, I think Mr. Granger was making himself a fool in the eyes of the world when he said, you know something? This constitution says a GCOM chairman must only be a past or a present judge. He knew fully well the constitution says, and any other person of similar standing, which could be a scientist, which could be a top-class aeronautical engineer. But he had Patterson in mind, and that is why he kept saying a judge, a judge, a judge, a judge. And he rejected 18 names from the opposition leader because the stage was set to bring that judge to rig the election. And as soon as the judge came in, he ordered fresh registration, which would have denied thousands of people in opposition constituencies to be registered. That's number two. Number three, when he came to power, he suddenly began to extol the non-existent virtues of Forbes Burnham. And he birthed 4 foundations in Burnham's name and put them in his private residence. So the stage was being set to Burnhamize Guyana again. Paramount Cedar Party. You know, I carry my dog at the National Park every day. And then one morning I saw all the lantern posts were painted in the PNC colors. So that was another indication. This man is a fanatical admirer of Burnham, and he's going to shape Guyana in ways Burnham wanted it, like the Paramount Cedar Party.
Right.
Number four, the creation of the Ministry of the Presidency was an overarching PNC office to subordinate every non-PNC ministry to that ministry. It so resulted that every ministry was subordinate to the Ministry of the Presidency. So you didn't have any coalition. Coalition is a system in which you got a part of the government. John's party got a part of the government. Maureen's party got a part of the government. And we bargaining. So John can't say to you, this is my government. All you have to do is do what happened in Trinidad with Basdio Pandey and elsewhere. You have a vote of no confidence and the government falls. So that Ministry of the Presidency was another part of the plan, right, to dominate the government and part of the conspiracy. And finally, number 5, what I saw the PNC doing in 2016, it had made up my mind that we're going back to racial domination. I thought when they came in 2015, there would have been a leveling out of this nonsense of concentrating power in one ethnic group, people being removed, and the exact thing was happening. You suddenly wake up a morning and find dozens and dozens and dozens of people are in these strategic positions, and the Indians are gone. I'll give you one example. One example that was really traumatic. They did forensic studies of these ministries, and they did a forensic study of the Georgetown Hospital, and absolutely nothing illegal was found in that audit. Yet they fired the head of the Georgetown Hospital.
I think it was Michael Ken.
Yeah. So those are 5 indications that we were heading for trouble.
But let me ask you a question. You did talk about that, but did you talk about the armyization, if you want to use that word, armyization of the country?
the social science would say the militarization.
All right, good.
Oh,
I'm using your words.
yeah, yeah.
Good. Go ahead, Freddie. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, they have two explanations for that. One is that he was not a PNC man, this guy Granger. I mean, nobody in politics knew about him when he became a contender for leadership. People were saying, who? Granger? The man wasn't the head of the army or something like that. Even one of President Hoyt's minister, Clarissa Real, told me at the South Road entrance of the High Court, Freddie, I never heard about this man. And she sat in the leadership of the presidency of the Guyana government under President Hoyt. She said, I never heard from this man. So what he was doing, he was creating a parallel party because they were all stalwarts in the PNC that were defying him. And he said, look, if I can create permanent power, I have to create a new PNC. That is why he couldn't tell Oscar Clark anything. When they had this Mexican investor bringing car parking meters, it was a terrible investment.
Mm-hmm.
And Oscar Clark was the man who went in Mexico and negotiated it. But Oscar Clark came to the PNC in the 60s, and when he couldn't talk to Clark. Like he couldn't talk to Valder Lawrence during the election. So, sensing that he has to create his own PNC, as Desmond Hoy did.
That's your thing of it.
He began to militarize. He began to militarize the government. So, the hospital was an army guy. The head of the public service school was an army guy. The head of the presidency was an army guy. And they were all people who rubbed shoulders with him. He even made, even put ambassadors that he knew from his army days. So that was one explanation. The second explanation is that in any grumblings or any insurgency or any confrontation, he had people in the state that had this militaristic temperament. You see, civilian people.
Right.
So that could be the two explanations.
Well, let me ask you, and going forward, and we will come back to the events that was around March the 2nd, because there's a big thing. Now, going forward, do you think that that this government here, this PPPC government, knowing everything that would have transpired here, that they're moving a little too slow, maybe not too seriously on what people have been calling for, which is the need heads to roll with regard to some of the things that happened in this country over the last 5 years?
I would say that is not strategic at the moment. If you have a good case of Boris Johnson versus the EU, how you strategize. I don't like Johnson as a prime minister, but he was a good strategist. What Johnson did, and what you have to be careful about in the Labour Party, he outsmarted the Labour Party. Johnson kept in the minds of the British people, we are a little colony of the EU. We have to leave the EU. And he kept making the EU the big bad wolf. They're not negotiating in good faith. So he kept this thing going. Now, what the PNC is doing, and the PPP has to be careful about, they're keeping this ethnic thing going. Now, if you read what is in your newspapers and the other newspapers, Dr. Melissa Eiffel, Deputy Vice Chancellor of the University, she writes, I am first and foremost a black woman. Lincoln Lewis wrote yesterday in reply to accusations that he was talking nonsense that the president should have seized the government. Read it yesterday. I am an African Guyanese. So they keep milking this thing. And it's very fresh in the minds of this nation. And you have to tread carefully. We're just 4 months out of this thing in which the 3-4 ethnic communities were viewing each other with suspicion. I said 3-4. Remember, it's this myth that it's Afro versus Indian. That is such an insipid myth. African Guyanese are 29% of the population. That means 71% of the population are not African Guyanese. a greater amount of percentage go to the mixed race. Now, so I think they are using three weapons, and it's too recent, and you have to be careful. One is the weapon of race.
Right, but that's a big issue.
That people are losing their jobs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, Mr. Aninandala, the AG, put it very, very brilliantly. It was so good. When they say they're discriminating against African Guyanese, the GCOM, Anil in his own inimitable way say, but if GCOM has only African Guyanese, who you expect to investigate? Pakistanis or Afghanistanis?
Right.
So that is one, the race thing they're using. The second thing is they're agitating. They're agitating their people to continue where they left off in 1992. But the good thing for Guyana, that isn't happening. I don't know if you know, but I know I worked with you for 3 weeks at the radio station, and we were gathering intelligence about what was going on. So you should know. During the Region 5 disturbances that Mr. Granger and Mr. Harmon instigated.
Are you talking about the West Berbice?
Yeah, that Region 3. Do you know people, scouts, went around to Agricola and Buxton and tried to bring out people?
Are you talking about the Henry Boys thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
The PPP also knew that their own supporters were getting unsettled. In fact, Bath Settlement, on the second day of the unrest, Bath Settlement youths were going around telling people, let us go out in the road to confront the African Guyanese. And I believe behind the scenes the PPP were telling them, no, you're playing into the hands. But PNC people and AFC people and WPA people went around and spoke to people in Denhamstel, in Agricola, and in Buxton, and they did not get a good response. And then, of course, Valda Lawrence, sensing that what would have happened and that this was wrong, much to her credit, she went there and got a better reception than Granger. I mean, you got to understand, Valda Lawrence, born and grew up like me, not far from me in South Georgetown. So she knows the lingo, she knows the people, she still lives there. Granger is a very standoff man. So if you can carry Granger somewhere for him to incite, he's going to sit on a bench and say, well, you know, in these volcanic times with a concatenation of evil, and people don't understand what the hell he say. Good. So Valda Lawrence went up there and said, look, this is not what Guyana is about. And the thing cooled down. Now, much to her credit, she was able to extinguish that bushfire of Granger and Harmon. I think Granger has now taken a back seat, and some of the people who are taking on that role is like a James Bond or a Sherwood Duncan and Christopher Jones. James Bond, of course, now have gone quiet. If a lamb is quiet, James Bond is quieter than a lamb because he knows he's in serious legal trouble. He may not see freedom again for another 20 years. So, in that kind of scenario, sensitive, brutal, cruel scenario that is being perpetuated by the PNC, AFC, WPA, you have to be careful. You've got to be careful because remember, people like you and I are not inside the intelligence agencies that are giving the government information. Now, for example, from what I have gathered, that two cousins that were killed was a sociological crime. It had nothing to do with politics. But the government is probably waiting for the moment to say, look, this is what were the causes of the homicide.
Right.
So you've got to be careful because right now, the pronouncement and the killings have not been made. If you keep confronting and confronting, they would use the absence of a final verdict on the homicides to do things. Listen, Leonard, one of the things the Guyanese people have to understand, and I'm talking, and it's a sad thing to say, very, very sad thing to say. for those who are supporters of the PNC. I think unnecessarily and tragically, and much to my dislike, and I say that from my heart, the PNC self-destruct in March 2020. Well, forget about the FC. They're dead and gone. They've ridden out into the sunset a long time ago. And they rode so fast that they rose into Soxan, and so Soxan sucked them up. But
A lot of imagery there, but go right ahead.
the PNC, their constituents, it's going to be sad for them to know that given the dialectical outplay in the next 5 years, I cannot see their party winning power.
Well,
even
we're
in
going
the
to
next
come
10
back.
years.
Freddie, we're going to come back to that. In our studio here today, joining us today is my colleagues, Shakima Day, Michaela Prince, Kemal King, and we all going to be together as we raise some issues, some of the biggest stories of the year that would have been affecting us in 2020, and would have made us sit up and raise our eyebrows there. Freddie, these are three young journalists that would have been thrown into the mix of things, into an elections of the kind. Would it be correct if I say, and for your knowledge, if I say, unlike anything Guyana have ever experienced, the elections of 2020?
I am glad those three young journalists had a taste of what, of course, I was in the studio during election time with them. And I think what they have witnessed, they will take with them very long into their 30s and 40s, because it's an experience that cannot be replicated only in civil war. Because I was in the studio with them. They were in Ashman Building. They were in, those same journalists that are sitting down there with you, had a terrible experience at the GCOM headquarters where thugs from the PNC and AFC were literally accosting and trying to physically assault journalists. And I was angry, and I did a column in which the Guyana Press Association issued a statement saying journalists were being attacked by all types of political parties. That was untrue. No one from ANUG, no one I saw from the PPP or from other parties were accosting journalists. It was thugs and miscreant from the PNC and the AFC. And that was an erroneous statement. And up to now, our journalists have not confronted the Press Association. And your three journalists that are inside there would know who are the people that were trying to attack them. I think all three of them may have been in that building that Friday night, March the 16th.
Thank you very much for that. If you're now joining us, this is the Wake Up Guyana show. It's the last show of the year, and we are bringing you a year in review. Some of the stories that made the news in the studio today with us. Shakima Day, Michaela Prince, Kemal King, and on the phone with us. These are young journalists. Kaieteur News would have been cutting the teeth on elections 2020, COVID-19 as well, which would have been affecting us. Some of the biggest stories coming out, they would have been in the thick of things. Freddy Kissoon, as always, would have been lending his analysis to the situation in Guyana, and he's been around for a little while and understands the ground on which we walk, the political grounds that is. I want to ask, I think it was Michaela, Shakima, which one of you were in front of the GCOM building there, the headquarters in Kingston, and it was not a good experience. There were fear. I saw you guys in the newsroom, and there were genuine fear there at that point in time. Who was it?
It was
all of us.
It was all of us.
And,
Yeah.
and could somebody tell us what happened there, and what did that mean for you? Did you feel like giving it all up as a journalist?
Well, it was the first declaration of
No, it was the second.
The second
Yes.
declaration. And we rushed down to the GCOM head office.
That was the bedsheet declaration, we call that,
Yes,
right?
the bed, yeah. Yeah, and we got there, and as they blocked off the streets, so we had to go through from Barrack Street, I believe it is, and walk up to the GCOM head office. And as we're walking up there, we realized, oh, we need to start running because we don't want to be late for the declaration or to get photos or whatever it was. And as we're going up there, we see APNU supporters, and not one or two or three of them, almost scores of them. Oh, hi, Miss Flaw.
Yes.
Yeah, scores of them who were standing in front of the GCOM head office there, and they saw us, and somebody starts to shout, "Who's them? Where they going?"
Media.
And they start charging at us.
So and they start saying no media, no media.
No media.
So
And
now everyone's hearing no media, and all their eyes are trained on us,
Yeah.
and everyone's suddenly running toward us. And you could imagine as a young person standing there on the street in the middle of the night to see scores of people just running towards
Yeah.
you, trying to get you away.
Yeah, at first you freeze because you're like, do I stop running? Do I continue? Would I continue? Would I be hurt? And as we're going ahead and they start getting closer to us, a woman approaches Shakim and I, and this.
She fixates her body in front of them,
Yeah.
saying, "You cannot pass."
And these were, I think one of the things that stuck in my head is that Freddie, this is interesting. These are the same people that were all over the place. If you go to the International Convention Center, you would see them there. You go to the courts, you would see the same set of people
faces.
there. You
Yeah.
go to GCOM, they're in front of there, always with placards.
Yeah, it was a very familiar bunch. At the point, you can almost you felt like you knew them because of the amount of times you would see them throughout this entire 5-month period. And when this woman placed herself in front of Shakima is a very confident young woman, and
Confrontational.
and she was like, "I need to get my job done." So Shakima is moving forward, and this lady holds her, and I can only imagine how scared Shakima was. And it was the same thing with myself, but I think she had more of a more aggressive.
It's really a story that I do not like speaking about because I could remember coming back to the office and just sitting at the desk just crying.
Yeah.
It was just so much.
I remember the newsroom at that particular evening.
And it like we expected because we were so excited. Well, we heard that a declaration was going to be made, so we were very excited. We wanted to go and get the pictures, get everything first. So when the lady came in front of me, I think it was Kimal. I told her I needed to get my work done, and Kimal saw that a conflict was gonna happen quickly, so he's like, let's go back to the office. But at that point, I guess when we got back to the office, when it finally sunk in what happened, then we were able to feel all of the emotions, and I remember I just started crying because it was too much.
You know how crowd think goes, Mr. Gildarie, when like if one punch flies, everybody goes crazy, and everything goes chaotic from there. So I thought it made no sense for us to press forward because things could get bad very quickly.
And what Kimal is saying there is just one of the many incidents that characterized elections 2020. There were fear, there were a lot of uncertainty. Even the political parties, when you talk, Freddie, when you would have been talking to some of the leadership within the People's Progressive Party, Civic, people were not sure what was going to be the next step, whether there was going to be any end in sight. It went from declarations to court case, back to declarations to court case. It was back and forth, uncertainty, a time that was very dark in the period. Freddie, coming back to you, would you say that we would have been soft on the Mingos and the Lowenfields and so on for this country here?
We meaning the Guyanese people, or
Yes, the Guyanese people, the courts, the government, everybody. This current government.
Okay. I think there was an atmosphere of uncertainty, and there was an atmosphere of fear. Now you got to. This thing is being taped, and when you play back the tape, those are 3 young journalists talking there, and one of them admitted that she went home and cried. Now 70% of our population is under 45. When you have these things happening to journalists, nobody knows what the election results can be. People are being chased. Journalists are being chased. politicians are being assaulted. Um, there is a generation of fear in people who are not seasoned and experienced. What experience a 35, a 25, a 35-year-old Guyanese has? And our population is pretty young. So during that 5 months, during that 5 months, I walked my dog alone at the back of Giffland. That was the curfew time at 6 o'clock. And people would drive into Demerara Estate and would stop and talk to me. And they would ask me things that I detect in their voice, that they were kind of sad of what is going to happen next. And they feel that what was going to happen next wasn't going to be nice. And of course, Kaieteur, the Prime Minister, helped unwittingly to engender that fear by saying it's not going to end well. And I will tell you this, for a man who has a young daughter, and for a man who has a
me
family,
have a young daughter, you got a young daughter.
who lives in Guyana,
Okay.
I was concerned about that. You have a family and the Prime Minister of one of the most powerful CARICOM states came to Guyana, an election impasse is still on, and he's saying it isn't going to end well. Now, so your direct question is if we were too soft on Mingo. I think Guyanese people definitely should be more confrontational. Not more, should be confrontational. There's something that creeped into our psyche that made us very sheepish. So I would say yes or no to your question. Yes, we were too mild, meek, soft on Mingo, but on the other hand, people knew that Mingo and Lowenfield had serious, formidable backings of people that were willing to break up the country. And maybe they said, and I think it was right, and I'm sure you and the three young journalists in the studio, they must know, if the 9 opposition parties had said, let this be a confrontation, where would that have ended? All along in my mind, Leonard, and speaking to the 3 journalists that are in there, I felt that the world had changed so much that given the part of the world that we were situated in, the OAS and the powerful states of the EU and the US would not have allowed A, disintegration of Guyana, B, the the overtake of violence in Guyana.
Yeah.
We are too strategically located. Any problem here is refugees bombarding the U.S. Embassy. Then we are next to Venezuela that the U.S. has an interest in. So although I knew there were fear in people, there was this tiny crevice in all Guyanese, I'm sorry if I'm speaking for all Guyanese, that these 2 powerful blocs, the U.S. and the EU, would not let this happen. And from the information I was getting, and I'm sure you got it too, because one man sat in front of you and I, and he was giving us information from which we knew that the U.S. was not going to allow this nonsense to continue. So I think it was a real oxymoronic situation those 5 months. People were fearful that the country will break up, but then there was a simultaneous optimism that the U.S. and the EU and very powerful countries like Canada and the UK would not allow Guyana to disintegrate. And in the end, they did not. I don't know if you know this, and I'm sure Mr. Lal knows it, and you know it, that by the time the Court of Appeal was to rule, and when the Court of Appeal ruled, the United States got on to Granger and said, it's the end. That's when the Court of Appeal ruled that it had come to an end. Remember, they had appealed the Chief Justice.
And I think the story is now coming out that it was the Secretary of State himself who called Granger himself.
I will tell you this. He refused in the initial stage. And then I'll tell you a second thing, but I'm not going to call her name. A particular woman in the leadership of the PNC was saying, do not take the call, ignore him, and we're not coming out. And this is the part I don't know. For whatever reason, Mr. Granger spoke to Pompeo, and that was the end. The rest is history. And that is factual, and that is why there was a declaration, and that is why the PNC AFC accepted the declaration of a CARICOM recount that Saturday morning.
That's interesting. And you know, Freddie, sometime or the other, it would have to come back. I think it would have to come out the timeline leading up to the last hours of Irfan Ali swearing in as the president of Guyana. What happened in those last few hours? I think in the last 48, maybe 72 hours or so, a couple of things happened. There was, according to our information, a letter that was done by David Granger as the president of Guyana, and he wrote that out even without conferring without anybody in his party or the coalition partners. We were told that, but it's going to be interesting.
The letter saying what?
Stating that I think it was to GCOM. I'm trying to get some details on it, but there was a letter that was done by Granger, even within the last 72 hours before the swearing in of Irfan Ali, and it was the GCOM, and I think it had to do with conceding. I'm going to get some more details.
That letter had to come after the telephone conversation with Pompeo, because that conversation took place on Friday, July the 31st.
Yes, sometime around there. It would have been within that 72 hours period. But Freddie, we also, if you're not joining us, is the Wake Up Show right here in Guyana. The Guyana's
show in the afternoon?
Yes, it is, and we're going to come back to that.
In the morning.
You're going to buy the buns or whatever it is.
The three journalists are still there in the studio.
They're here.
Yes,
I'd like to ask all three of them a question if they're listening.
They're
Can you tell me if they're listening?
Yes, they are.
Or you can have a wake-up show in the afternoon.
Well, that was the thing. It's not to wake you up in the afternoon. It's to wake up your soul, Freddie.
Well,
all right?
You know people's soul are sleeping in the afternoon. You're a psychologist?
Well, you see, this Freddie is always... Freddie, I'm not in the mood. This is the last day of the year, so we're going to be very nice to you. Freddie, behavior of politicians. I'm going to pose this question to my three wonderful colleagues here in the studio. I want to ask them, because they would have had experiences with our politicians over the last couple of years. This year especially has brought on some ugliness. Kimal, some experiences this year.
You want me to talk about how I view
elections,
the behavior?
Elections, otherwise, some of the experiences with our politicians, our leaders this year.
The first thing that jumps out at me when you ask me about the behavior of politicians is Mr. Aubrey Norton. Mr. Aubrey Norton was one of the main spokespersons for the APNUFC during the recount, and he would usually come out to the recount tent,
also known as the slaughterhouse.
This was in front of the
Artichung Conference Center.
That's correct.
And Mr. Norton would give accounts of the party's position on the issues and maybe talk about a little of the anomalies that they claimed they observed. What was extremely daunting for me is how Mr. Norton would so comfortably stand there behind the podium and make statements that are patently false. And even when confronted with the truth right before his eyes, he would just brush it off. And this happened time after time after time. And you know, before that, I hadn't had much exposure to Mr. Norton, but I've heard people praising him, people talking about their experience with him through academia and so on, talking about how they respect him so much because he is such an esteemed politician. And I didn't have that experience. My first experience with Mr. Norton is to hear him telling lie after lie after lie behind the podium. And that really set the stage for how I would go on to view the wider APNU-EFC coalition moving forward, seeing as that's the person they chose to be their spokesperson to represent them during this election saga.
I want to ask, because as you were speaking there, and Freddie, this is an interesting something. I've always said on this program that I'm not aware that Kaieteur News has any horse in the race. I could remember 2011 elections, I could remember 2015, I could remember 2020. And here you have three young journalists that doesn't know anything about or know very little about Burnham, very little about Chetty. But they're here in a modern times in an elections that was very critical, and they're reporting what they see and see it, calling it as they see it. Freddie, I want to jump straight across to you. Is that something that is very good for reporting for the media business in Guyana, that you have journalists who are actually independent and seeing things and calling things as they see it?
Well, what happened to those journalists and what uh, um, Kemal was just saying about Mr. Norton. I have said it before. I've written it so many times. I am glad we had the 2020 election impasse. And I think all those three journalists who have 40 years more experience with them, if they're going to stay in journalism, they should be glad it happened. What this election results show is the self-destruction of so many people. King talked about, he heard about Aubrey Norton. I grew up with Clive Thomas and Rupert Roopnarine. I was a personal friend of David Hines. David Hines was having dinner with me 2 nights after the election results was not declared. So the election was March the 3rd. David Hines was having dinner with me on my veranda on March the 4th. Those were my personal friends when I was a young hippie with long hair in the 70s. And to see what those people have become. Now, I knew Norton very, very well. And one of the things I knew about Norton in secret discussions in PNC War Room, that's the biennial, that's when the executive meet and what have you.
Yeah.
He always took a position of we need multiracial unity. He always used to take that position. And it was when on March the 5th, when Mingo, the day after Mingo did his nonsense, I was in the park with my dog and I got a call from Aubrey. And he said, I read your column and I think this is the way for Guyana. Guyana must have a power sharing, inclusive governance. That's the only way we can go. And I said, I agree with you, this PNC versus PPP thing. Now what he's telling me, now what Kemal is telling me, of course, I read a little about it in the newspapers. These people, sadly enough, he singled out Norton. Earlier I talked about the Guyana Press Association. But you can go through an inexhaustible list of people of top-class education that have self-destruct.
That's right.
I could tell you about personal conversations I had with people that I was locked up with, people who I fought with, and I would say, aren't you going to say something about what's going on here? We went through this in the 70s. I could tell you, but I'm willing to call their name. I'm not that kind of person that say a man or a woman. I like to call people names because history could be recorded, and I'm careful that I don't get any libel. I fought and struggled with Dr. Nigel Westmont. And I said to him, you haven't written anything about what's going on here. We got locked up together fighting for free and fair election.
Well, let me just jump in here, Freddie, because what you have done there is basically what you have said there just reminded me. We had a couple of columnists here, Lincoln Lewis, David Hines, and there was somebody else. Who was the other person? I think there was some. I think editors, we have to edit, and there's a couple of things and I'm just giving you some insights as to how we think here at Kaieteur News, Kaieteur Radio. I think when editors were looking at it, and when you're editing, you have to look at as whether is it factual, is it in good taste. Along those lines, you would do things when you're editing. And when you look at some of these columns that were being put out, and I just put to you a couple of the people that were writing columns. Glenn had to pick up the phone and says, look, these are the guidelines. And you know what? During the elections, just to prove that Kaieteur News, they don't agree with Kaieteur News. Kaieteur News is being racist or something like that. People right. I think Lincoln Lewis was the first one, and I'm saying these things because these are facts. That the stop writing that says because of whatever XY reason we can't write anymore. And this was in the midst of the election. So there was a clear drawing of a line in the sand when it comes to which political side you're standing on. And so, Freddie, I just wanted to interject and tell you a little bit that. But over to Shakima, we're going to come back, Freddie.
Yes, sir.
If
Yes.
you'll allow me, because you mentioned Mr. Hines, he had written a letter explaining why he decided to rescind his column.
Yes.
And in that, he said that Kaieteur News was essentially pushing him out in every sense of the word, and that the reporters had stopped reaching out to him for comments. They had
Yeah,
not
that was
reached
a
out to
very
him for
straight
comments.
statement.
Yeah.
So, and it was surprising for me because I remember being in the newsroom and Ruel Johnson turning to me many days and saying, Kimal, reach out to this person, reach out to that person, let them comment, reach out to the constituents of the coalition. And I remember reaching out to Mr. Hines specifically to ask him for comments. I remember one night I texted him on WhatsApp and I asked him for a comment, and he was talking to me, but he ended up not giving me the comment. So then he writes this letter and he says that reporters stopped reaching out to him for comments when it is that I actually did reach out to you. You refused to give the comment, and now you're going to tell the public that it's the journalists that are discriminating against you.
So I think the point here is that you would hear some things in the open there, Freddie, and or my colleague journalist here, is that you would hear some things, but if you know some of the things that we would learn behind the scenes, it put things in perspective. And Kemal would have used a word patently false that would have been coming from Aubrey Norton there, standing in front of the International Convention Center, where there was a recounting going on, not too far from where you live in, Freddie. And so you see these people standing up there, and you say, "My God." I mean, you know that that's wrong what they're saying there because we know. And coming back to the journalists, I mean, you know what they did to journalists during this time here, Freddie, because this is one of the big stories. We are key stakeholder in the elections. Freddie, you're a key stakeholder, you're columnist. If you call and ask for information, you're supposed to get it. They put the journalists in the mud in front of the convention center where rain is falling. It's only because they start behaving bad, then you see they come and build a little wooden platform and put in some fans and a proper tent and things like that and a sound system and so.
Right.
Outside of the convention center, our convention center, Freddy Kissoon. You understand what I'm saying? I'm going to come back to you, Freddie. Michaela, a couple of the stories this year, 2020, that you could recall that you said, wow, what a year 2020.
That's a tough question because there's so many stories that we would have covered exposing, and it's a tough question.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we had the Global Witness signed away report. Global Witness is an international NGO that did an assessment of the Stavro Block agreement that we have with Exxon. And in that report, they stated that within the lifetime of our oil industry, the contract, Guyana stands to lose about $55 billion. And
That was big.
if you ask the average person on the road what $55 billion is,
US dollars.
US dollars, they wouldn't know because you've never had
That much
$55 billion. But when you take it into perspective with the country, you can change the lives of so many Guyanese, and not just the current ones, but the generations to come. So that report was released in January of this year. And I think that was one of the first dominoes, at least in Guyana, that started to fall with the rest of events that happened in.
Made the elections more contentious.
Yes, but much more contentious. So people were vying to stay in office, and some people were vying to go into office because we want to get a part of and start to control the very lucrative oil and gas industry. Kemal, what do you want to add?
Well, I come over to Shakima. Shakima,
Some of the more interesting stories came out during the election season. I could recall one of the stories we were at that was at the Ashman's building, the bomb threat. That was one of the big issues that came out. Along with that, we had some of the claims that the coalition made about migrant voters. It turns out 2 of the persons on the list that they had were my family members.
Migrants are dead.
No, migrants.
Oh.
They said that they were out of the country, and I recognized the names when they published the list. And those people are my family. And I knew, like, I was so certain that they were in the country, and they voted on March the 2nd. That was another big issue. And then we had the whole, when they were preparing for the recount, 2 days or a day before the recount was supposed to start, at 7 o'clock in the evening, they were fumigating for ants.
Yeah.
I kid you not.
Yes, it was a delay in when the recount was supposed to start, and that was the night when Mr. Minister
Ropes
and Ben, so patriotic, threw himself on the ground as a human barricade. Yeah.
Well, many stories, many twists in the plots that would have been here. Freddie,
Yeah.
On one of the day, I think it was March the 16th, I can't remember, the particular day with when 4 or 5 high-ranking diplomats of Guyana walked out of the Ashman building. What did that represent to you, Freddie?
It represented there and then that the PNC had lost its case. Dr. Thomas Singh from UG called me to say, I'd like your explanation as to why the West is taking this position on the election. Freddie, this thing has any foreign policy implications, any strategic, geopolitical? I said, Thomas, let me tell you why the West is taking the position it's taking. These people are seeing in front of their eyes what is going on, and they're saying to themselves, you cannot expect me, an international diplomat with my reputation, to not to denounce what I'm seeing in front of me. This is where the PNC and AFC case went bad. And Burnham came out of his grave and tried to choke Granger and the AFC and Harmon and all of them. I don't know, he nearly killed them. If you're going to rig an election, how are you going to tell the U.S. diplomat, you have to leave the room, you have to leave, while the votes are being counted? You know what you are doing there and then? You are there and then telling that person, could you leave the room so I could tamper with the elections? Now, if you read what the Canadian High Commissioner said, when they said fire, fire, they refused to leave because they knew it was a false alarm. Now, those are the things, that incident, the accreditation thing in which the former Prime Minister of Barbados, Leonard, got up and said, I could give you back. Those were the things that finally nailed the coffin for APNU AFC, that you cannot treat international diplomats like that in front of the world. When those people walked out, when Oinata got up to give back the accreditation, there were hundreds of smartphones on, and these things were being transmitted around the world. Mm-hmm. What that walkout told us is that somebody somewhere had lost their mind, and that was the end of it. All they did is they carried the country through 5 months of agony. Now, let me get back to Kemal and what Abinatu was saying that were patently false. He was talking about his experience with Norton. Anyone, no matter how young as those 3 journalists in the studio right now, would know that there is no station, there is no ballot station where soldiers vote at. You cannot find a voting house where all the security votes are. The security votes, they took them from Lethem, Mahaika, West Coast, and they distributed them around the country. So for Joe Harmon to say that the ballots were not stamped, he could not know that, because the policemen who voted in Mahaika, their things were taken and shared out and put in other ballot boxes. Now, whatever repulsed King, what Aubrey Norton said. The world was repulsed at what Harmon said about those security ballots not being counted because they were not stamped. How could he have known that?
Right.
Those things were all over Guyana, so he had to go in to about more than 400 ballot boxes to see that those security forces ballots, it's, we're going through this thing. And I have learned some things from this program. I am so glad. Two things stand out is when that young lady told me she went in and cried. When she said that, I'm on the phone here. You can't see my emotions. The Guyana Press Association said this was the political parties harassing journalists. That are the lessons that we should learn from this 5-month crisis and what we should learn from 2020. Now, here are two journalists describing, and I hope that lady from the Guyana Press Association, all of them are listening. If I can recall, they were saying people from APNU came out, sandwiched their bodies, them tell them they can't go in. This must be a priceless experience for those young journalists. I think it could only serve them well in the future.
I fully agree with you. All experiences, it depends how you look at it. You have to look at it. And I mean, for me, I like to look at bad things that happen that we could learn from those experiences. And 2020 has been that. If you're now joining us, it's the Wake Up Guyana show, Freddy Kissoon on the Kaieteur Radio. You could get us live on 99.1 in Essequibo and Demerara and Berbice. It's 99.5. We also coming to you live stream on the Kaieteur Radio on Facebook or Kaieteur Radio live stream on YouTube. Freddy Kissoon, ladies and gentlemen, Kimal, I want to ask about there were some young leaders that really, I think for me, if you were to ask me, these were some of the top stories, top 5 stories. The young leaders who emerged during this. Josh, Kanai, and I can't remember the rest of them. You guys just remind me. But there were a couple of them. Freddie, I did not see you out there, but they were guarding the containers, the guardians, I think, of democracy, you call them. They were also the use of social internet, the social network, Facebook especially, during these elections. But let's take the first one, the emergence of those young leaders. I think one of the big stories here. I'm going to ask Kimal about that. Let us go right into it, Kimal.
Well, there were these new politicians, I should say, from parties like a New and United Guyana and the Citizenship Initiative, a lot of youth leaders that didn't even come from any sort of political background. Some of them were doctors and so on, and teachers and so on. People like Josh Kanhai, Asha Kissoon, and then there's the Citizenship Initiative, which was quite a youth party by itself too. And I think you have not seen this level of dedication to protecting the integrity of the ballot when they decided that they would stand outside at the conference center or at GCOM's Kingston headquarters and guard the ballots, even though there were cameras everywhere, even though the media was out there day and night. They still wanted to make sure that everything was fine. And they were so dedicated that GCOM decided that they would give each of them a lock that they would place on the containers as their seal. So if anybody would go into, would break into it, they would know. They would have to cut the seal. And once the seal of a certain party is missing, then you have a problem.
Freddie, I want to ask you, and following up from what Kimal would have said there, Freddie, is it a good thing for the future of this country that we have coming out of elections of this importance? And we could use different words to describe it. Is it a good thing for future that we have these young leaders? In all your years, have you ever seen this kind of agitation coming from our young people?
Well, I saw it in the 70s, and that was Rodney was able to bring that out. I mean, he was an extraordinary man. I have a problem with the future. They were excellent. I stayed from my bedroom window and I saw what they were doing. I saw going into Giffland. I saw that courage. There were times in that recount where it was pouring, it was raining elephants, and those people were out there. In fact, when the morning come, I would go out in my top veranda and look out. The problem I have with Guyanese youth is that those situations brought out the best in them. But for this country to come good, you need staying power. You need them to be around and to keep a government on their toes, to keep the judicial judges on their toes that do sentencing a little 18-year-old youth to 3 years for 2 grams. Those are kind of things that the young people, the courage they displayed for those months are able to, let's use the right word, phenomenal, fantastic, par excellence. You hope that it continues. Now, there is a setback, of course. Some of them resigned from the new movement, so they're not in the new movement. And some of those who resigned were at that convention center counting. So I am in two minds. I think that kind of valor and that kind of unprecedented energy saved Guyana. I think if they were not there day and night, and I saw one of them ask me to donate water. Those guys were great. Young women, I saw a little bit of that, and I knew we had it in Guyana with the parking meter protest. These young girls and boys came up from the insurance company, commercial banks, and they were there in their hundreds saying no to the parking meter. And I think they were the people, some of them that flowed over into that safeguarding at the ballot boxes. My concern is that will we see them around, and we need to continue to have them around. And that is why I was personally disappointed at what happened to the new movement, because those young people in the new movement, the doctors and them, they did very well. One has to understand that the world also took its cue from them. When people in the OAS, the Commonwealth, saw these young people day and night guarding those ballot boxes, they knew something. Guyana had to be protected. So where do we go from here as 2021? Will we still see them? Look, the election is over. There's a new government. Let's hope that new government does well. But this is a sad country with a lot of human rights violations, bad service to old people in the NIS, terrible disparities in sentences. You know, Leonard, I cannot miss saying this in your program. And I know I would have said it before the program is over. I would not accept any country sentencing a man to 30 years for killing his 3 children. In any part of the world, that's a life sentence.
Yes,
These are the kinds of things these young people that showed so much blood and sweat and tears in July, June, July, August, June and July. They have to continue that energy, because in enlightened part of the world, the Caribbean, this country cries out for people to speak out. The way police treat people, the way public servants treat people, the way the judicial officers treat defendants, the way employees treat their employees treat their employees. It cannot end in July at the Ortachon Convention Center. It has to continue. And so my answer to you is yes, they played a priceless part, but I want to see a continuum.
I thank you very much for that. If you're now joining us, we are doing the year in review right now. Some of the top stories, some of the top issues. We have with us here columnist Mr. Freddy Kissoon, and of course our journalists, top journalists of Kaieteur News, my colleagues, Kimal King, Michaela Prince Shikimade. Michaela, I want to
Hi.
ask you about the role of social media. I know that we at Kaieteur News would have been able to use social media in a very big way. In fact, with Room 592, the elections was the COVID-19 was that we would have been with myself and Yog, we would have been able in a big way using Zoom and so on, seen some incredible numbers. Of course, you would have also seen other network or other persons overseas and in Guyana been using the social media in Guyana. How big of a role did social media play, in your view, in elections 2020? And let's talk about elections 2020.
Okay. Well, during the elections, a lot of us were leaning towards Facebook because it's easier for you to get information, very accessible. And in that period, it's where we would share our stories. We would give people on the ground information. It's when we would do live streams because we realized like people are on this app 24 hours every day, and this was a very contentious period. So we needed to get them footage and audio anytime possible. It was also the place where there was a lot of propaganda and lies being shared, and a lot of it came from the APNU AFC. And without verifying their supporters or people who were privy to their page would just start sharing these things like within a couple of minutes, and you got thousands of shares of very blatant lies
And causing and creating panic with those
Yes.
very posts.
Yes, it and we were every day we had to say no, this is not true. No, this is a lie. No, this is a half truth. All the time it was so frustrating because it was hard. You had these people part of a machinery who were just their objective was to lie and to misinform and to create panic and chaos
It was like
and
a
further
full
hate.
propaganda team, and they were
Yes.
so strategic with it. They had their own. We had our media center set up by the ACC, and they had theirs set up by the Aquatic Center.
Yeah.
And every time they would have people come there and give interviews, and they would throw out a lot of stuff that we would have to then correct. It was too much.
It got really terrible. I don't even know who was coming up with these things. We have a colleague of ours, a cameraman from
Yes, Abel. I was just about to
yeah,
say that.
a cameraman from Guyana Times. And when you're a cameraman, you do landscape shots to go with these stories. And during one afternoon, we were in front of Artichung, and he is there with his camera, doing scanning. And a couple of minutes later, we see on Facebook. PPP sends out their cameraman to spy on APNU AFC media tent. And I'm like,
It was so wild. It was so wild, and people ate it up. It was shared within half an hour. It had almost 1,000 shares, and people really believed that. And people were attacking the cameraman on Facebook, and it was ridiculous.
There is another big issue while we've been talking about the political side of things, Freddie and ladies and gentlemen, Kimal. The COVID 19, it has disrupted our lives. It has really affected the economy side of things, our way of life, parties, nightlife, everything, every facet of you could talk about our life in Guyana, and it's not only Guyana, right around the world. Freddie, do you see next year that this is going to ease in a little while? What are some of the projections here?
I am not familiar with all the nuances. I can only speak on what I've been reading, and that it's getting there's a new strain out in Europe, and it's hardly there are hardly signs that it's disappearing. But I think one of the problems here, and I'm going to get into trouble for this because I'm no scientist. I think it's not as bad in tropical countries as it is in cold countries. I know there's a definite.
You're talking in terms of death or the economic side of things?
I'm talking about the expansion of the pandemic. I think there's a definite pronouncement that the thing thrives more, the virus thrives more in cold countries. You did ask me if I would see it easing up. I think maybe in the tropical countries, once they take the stringent measures. As to it easing up, all I could give is a layman's opinion. These things come and then eventually they go, but we have to take precautions. My concern is the economic downside to it. when you have poor countries like Guyana, when the thing stops next year time, then you're going to see the real economic implications. Um, that's my fear.
Thank you very much for that. If you've now joined us, this is the Wake Up Guyana show, our year in review right here on Kaieteur Radio. A couple of the big stories for the year. The Henry Boys murder would have led the protests across the West Berbice Road for several days. People killed, vehicles burnt. Racism in Guyana raised its head in a very big way. Land controversy, we would have seen some scandals over the year that would have been coming out under the new government would have been making these disclosures based on what they would have found. Of course, we are analyzing the behavior of our politicians. We would have been talking, or we'll be talking in a very short while, the emergence of the Lampy Pampis in Guyana. Very serious, very forward. Freddie, if you're not familiar, we're going to talk a little bit that. Of course, we
I know about
cannot.
that. I know about the
Yes,
Lampy
we
Pampis.
can't get away. We cannot get away from the fact that we would have been dealing with a very big way with the emergence of the work done by our frontline workers in Guyana, the frontline workers or the health workers, the emergency workers, the ambulance drivers, our nurses, our doctors. We got to say big up to them too, because we did recognize what you would have done. The media workers, fantastic job during this year here. Of course, we will in a very short while be talking to Mr. Glenn Lal because he probably would have a very short message.
He's right
Something-
here.
don't go away far, sir. So I know that you want to have your thing, but we have your thing. Freddie, before I know that we have to wrap up, and I know you have to go. The performance, there are two things here, and we can't get away without hearing your analysis of it. Irfan Ali, under the shadow of Jagdeo, this seems to have been a topic, and of course his performance, the performance of this PPPC government. I want to hear your thoughts on that very quickly.
I think you have to give any government, you have to give them a chance. And you can't make a negative pronouncement after 4 months, given the economy that they've inherited, the COVID-19 devastation. My take on this government is basic and fundamental to human behavior and philosophy. You have to learn from the mistakes from the past, internalize those mistakes so you could go on to greater horizons. I think there are a few questions along the way. Some people that have come back and you wonder why you didn't fill the slots with newer, more committed faces, etc. I don't know the reasons for that. I think one of the reasons could be these people have experience. After look what happened after 5 months, maybe we need their experience. But my thinking is that I have not seen any undue or any repugnant or any malignant departure that will shock the nation. I hope that doesn't happen. After 4 months, I think we have to give them the benefit of the doubt, given what they've inherited. They've inherited 5 months of a crisis that was devastating. But as I said, when the PPP was in power, there were some terrible mistakes. And they have to learn from that.
Freddie,
If they don't learn from that, we are not going anywhere.
thank you very much for that, Freddy Kissoon, our columnist right here at Kaieteur News. Freddie, in closing from you, because I know that you said you were busy, could you tell us what are some of the priorities for this government in 2021?
My essential conceptualization as a human being living in a poor country is eradication of poverty, and given our poor state of development and people's need a human rights recognition. I think this country needs to seriously tackle wages and salaries, living conditions, the future of youth, and I believe in comparison. I think there's a letter in our newspaper today in which a man is saying Trinidad and Jamaica, they have better service, better attitude. I think that is a priority for me. That I have been a social activist for over 50 years when you were in diapers, and I don't want to drive no pessimism into this young nation, but you go year after year and you see hope things change, and they don't. They don't. I mean, I live on a major highway in Guyana, and I see, look out my window, and see what the police do to people. You know, stop people without any justification. Papers, papers. You know, human rights violations are a problem in this country, and I would say those are some. I'm not an economist. I can only speak in my area, and my area is philosophy, rights, justice, those kinds of things. And I would advise the government or any government in those areas. A country doesn't have freedom if you sue for wrongful dismissal, and it takes 10 years to hear in court. It doesn't.
Right.
You know, those kind of things. Speedy trial, as I said before. There are lots wrong with this country. We need to all get together and make it a better place than some of our Caribbean neighbors. Gildarie, Leonard, I cannot accept a man killing his 3 children and getting 30 years.
I hear you, Freddy. And Freddy, I want to say thank you
Should
very
get
much.
life with parole after 60 years.
Thank you
He
very
won't
much.
kill a child and get 10 years. He got 10 years for each child.
All right. Thank you very much, Freddie. All the best to you and your family for the rest of this year, and of course, a prosperous new year to you as always. Our very own Freddy Kissoon, columnist
All
at
right.
Kaieteur News. Sir, thank you very much for taking time
Bye-bye,
out, and,
bye-bye,
and
bye-bye
we'd
to
have a good
everybody
day.
in the studio.
Good.
Bye.
So in the meantime, we have joining us very quickly as we come down to program time, no other than Mr. Glenn Lyle, our publisher of Kaieteur News, and I want to say good day to you, sir. So, sorry, I know that you have some very quick thoughts as to what transpired this year and what you expect next year from this government of ours.
Good afternoon, every one of you guys.
Hi.
Uh, driving, coming on the road there are lots of traffic. And I'm listening to the radio, and I heard you guys were having this discussion on race. And the first thing came to mind, it made me smile, and I'm thinking and I'm saying in my mind, this is exactly where the oil companies want us to fight among ourselves. They create confusion and chaos. You guys remember what the first thing they do, right? If you don't remember, let me tell Guyana. The first thing oil companies come in your country and do is they line the pockets of our politicians. A few citizens will become filthy rich. And the last thing they do, the third thing they do, is that they create confusion, chaos, and instability. And while we fight among ourselves, they are fetching away your goods, your gold, your diamond, your bauxite, your oil, by the truckloads and by the plane loads and by the ship loads. And last week I was talking to 2 lawyers on the same subject matter. The energy, the time they spent running and going behind clients of these issues that stirs up race. I say you guys can do better than that. We should be looking at the contracts to which our government, past and present, sign as to what, and compare it to our pockets, what we are getting. I spoke about what we are getting for a Christmas message which will be aired tonight at 7:20 p.m. And tomorrow at 12:15. I want all of you guys, the listeners out there, please listen to it. Today, one of my journalists, Guyana, she interviewed 3 experts in the oil industry, and she was lucky enough to get Mr. David Patterson on the panel. And when I listened to that program today, the program basically says, Guyana, you have nothing to get. And these are experts telling you this, that you have nothing to get. And if you don't watch yourself, we will be heading we will be heading in billions of US dollars debt as the oil company them leave these shores, like many, many, many countries. So it is extremely important that all of you listen to these oil discussion and programs so that we all can learn, and that will give us the opportunity to speak to our leaders and ask questions as to why are you guys allowing these things to happen to us. It's a lovely program. A matter of fact, her hour was coming to an end, and I sent a message to her and I said, do not cut that program. If they want to talk until 5 o'clock today, I tell them to go ahead. Because it was so interesting. Almost all the things that this newspaper would have written, and some of the things we would have been talking on the radio, these people were very clear on those issues. As a matter of fact, when I was listening to them, I am saying, wait, this is Glenn Lal talking. But I said, no, these are the experts. But guess what? In my recording message, one of the experts used my exact sentence. The exact sentence she used. So, guys, we gotta focus on our bread and butter, our pockets. That's where our energies and our strength should be. Nowhere else but that. Because we are filthy rich. We are tremendously rich. Kuwait right now, Kuwait is the largest fuel oil country right now. Their citizens, each citizen is entitled to 17,000 barrels. And that's the leading country. The second one is Dubai with 12,000 barrels per citizen. Right? That's what they equate it to. Where is Guyana? Guyana is third. Guyana is third presently. And that puts us at 9,000 barrels per citizens. But hear this. Kuwait 17, Dubai 12, Guyana 9. Guyana 9 is only compared to 3 little well they dig already. Lisa 1, Lisa 2, and Payara 3. And if we are 9,000 barrels there, when they continue to drill the other wells, we will become the leading nation in terms of oil.
Right.
We will be entitled to maybe 200,000-300,000 barrels per person. But the big question here, Kuwait and Dubai, their citizens is collecting fat US dollar checks every month. As a matter of fact, they don't have to work. Guess what? We did 9,000 already. And did you get $1 Guyana dollar, Gildarie? No. And instead, we focus on that. Our leaders is telling us about work, jobs, put back people for cut cane, and plant rice.
Going forward next year, Mr. Lal, what do you say to this government, the PPPC government, on the air finale?
I don't want to say to them, I want to say to all Guyana, including them, that these contracts, they're not only one-sided and lopsided. It is an unjust contract. They are taking advantage on us. In that program, I said, what Exxon is doing to Guyana, to each and every one of us with that contract, you can equate that to a child. You give a child a sweetie in the mouth, and you see the neighbor walking, take away the sweetie from the child's mouth, and push in a little brick in the child's mouth, and he gone with the child's sweetie. Well, that is what is happening in this land.
I want to flip this up on you, Mr. Lal. For some people who says that you're harping on this, why is this man here who owns a newspaper is harping on the people all the time? Why is this important to the people?
It is important because nobody is saying anything. And I am the media. It is my responsibility. It is my duty to explain to them, to tell you guys out there, if you don't know, if you can't see, I have to do that.
Is this a peculiar position that you're sitting in? And I have you in the hot seat here, sir. Is this a peculiar position because you have a newspaper? It's a very successful newspaper. The radio is doing extremely well. And this is not a task that you've taken on. Very unusual situation. What do you say to the people? I know that I just asked you, it's an extension of what I just asked you there. Is it because you see yourself as a citizen who understand what is happening and you want to share that for us not to walk the same road as the other countries?
Gildarie, in this life, if you understand life the way I do, you will understand that we were placed here on this earth for a specific reason, a purpose. And I am just fulfilling my purpose. And my purpose is to continue being a media person, to explain, to teach, to educate, to inform the world, the country, my people as to what is taking place in and around them. I can't sit here, I can't be in this media outfit and know that each citizens should be living like kings and queens, but they wouldn't be living like that because the leaders are not making the right decisions to bring about that change, that wealth into each and every single Guyanese pockets. I have to speak out. I have to show them, listen, this is where needs to be fixed. The holes needs to be plugged. Provisions need to go in place. Rules and regulations has to be in place to safeguard our wealth.
Mm-hmm.
That is my role. That is your role. That is all of us' role. To teach, to educate. One of the greatest gifts you can give to a human being is wisdom, is education.
And there you would have had it, Mr. Glenn Lal, publisher of Kaieteur News and owner of Kaieteur Radio, making it very clear as to where he stands with this oil. It's not going to go away at any point in time. He is going to keep up the pressure on it because he says all Guyana could benefit. And when you make comparisons to what the rest of the world is doing, countries like Kuwait and Saudi Arabia and so on, take examples, but also take the examples, the bad examples, and note them of some other countries which have made mistakes, some mistakes that we are making right now. So, Mr. Lal, in closing, anything else you want to say to the people of Guyana?
Yes, I wanted to just touch a little more. We are not making mistakes. Some of the things that is happening here is deliberate. You know? Nobody, not even a moron or an idiot, would give away their house and land that they live in. No. Much less give away oil blocks that worth billions of American dollars to people that they might tell you they don't know who they give it to. You understand?
Yeah.
So these are not mistakes. Some will be mistakes, but some are deliberate.
Corruption?
Yes, it is massive corruption. There hasn't been a country that that has oil and gas that massive corruption wasn't in. I listened to my program 720 tonight, and I have addressed that. I have addressed some of the things Mr. Gildarie and I had discussed, in which he didn't give me the opportunity to respond. But I had addressed him, and tonight you can listen to it. Tomorrow you can listen because it's going to be there. We're going to replay it 12:15 tomorrow. So if you miss it tonight, you can get it tomorrow. It's important. It's very, very, very important to listen to the response as to how Gildarie sees our wealth in this land. So, folks, I just want to tell each and every one of you a happy and blessed New Year. I do hope that come 2021, as you listen to that program, we all hold one head as brothers and sisters, and demand a change on all these contracts our leaders have signed that is lopsided and that it only benefits one side. Any contract that benefits one side and one side only is not a contract. Thank you. And
Thank
have
you
a
very
blessed
much,
new year.
dear. Mr. Glenlal is always very straight up, and you're not gonna get it. It's not without any icing or anything. It's there, straight up in your face. Mr. Glenlal, publisher of Kaieteur News, on the Wake Up Guyana show, and this is the last edition. And of course, we're gonna take a couple minutes into the time with WR Riaz. It's supposed to be his show now, but we've decided because it's a year in review, plenty things happening. Riaz, you've had your finger on some of the things that have happened this year. What are some of the big stories this year?
Well, of course, good day to all our radio listeners. Yeah, we did mention we'll change things up last week. We did say we'll change things up this week, and that's exactly what we're doing. You know, it's been a year that your panel earlier, Freddie, and the three young journalists, Mr. Lal, everyone have touched on. There's been some very worrying situation for a nation, and as a youngster who have I don't want to say grew up between two eras in the sense that I've grown in the 90s era, fortunate to be in broadcasting around the 90s, because as I started my television career at that time, TV was bigger than radio. Radio have just developed like about 5 years maybe. So I had a little taste of the 90s, the late 90s, the early 2000s, where society had much more tolerance and much more respect for each other. And I've seen 2020, all of that just went through the window. And how did it go through the window? It went through the windows through politics and disgruntled attitude and powerful, assumably thinking that you're the most powerful individual or individuals or groups. And that has caused a great negative impact on society, as little as people don't want to tell you this. Not personally in front of the Ashmins building, the attitude of the director of sport towards a former president of the country, a longest running president. Listen, let's just use this as an example. If Mr. Lal and we had different opinion on many occasions, difference of opinion on many things, but if I cannot respect him, then we should not have a conversation. All right? And this is where I've seen respect flew through the window. And what you find happening, the right hand and the left hand man who's behind individuals, they take that power struggled mentality to where they came from. And we saw a recent video of one of these individuals. I ain't sure when it was, but he was arguing with a woman. I'm assuming it's the stallion at Parika.
Yeah, I saw that.
Thinking that you still, well, I don't know when this video was filmed, whether it was when he assumably had power or it was after. But it brings the point. You could have simply gone to the woman, explain yourself, whatever it was. I don't know the situation, but it brings me to the point that we've let our politicians brainwash us too much, and the power struggle will only remain on yourself. Because that example with that guy there, who ended up happening? I'm assuming he missed the boat. He had to stay himself in his own corner. Nobody went fight any battle. But
What is in your view, Riaz? What are some of the stories that made you sit up and say, "Wow"? This year,
there's so much. Let's see. COVID, of course, is one that struck the world that we've never would have expected something to occur. But Guyana's politics has waken us all up wee hours in the morning, wee hours. Um, if I was a cinematographer, I would have made a hit out of our elections.
There's some beautiful stories to be told. There's so many plots and
Yeah,
subplots.
there's been plots of this plot of Madam Cheer locked in a door, door knobs removed, Dr. Joshua Kanai because assisted, I'm not sure of his rank, but a police officer that went up because he have a close relationship with Madam Cheer at that time. He went in, Dr. Kanai rushed in, and Dr. Kanai was taken to Brickdown Police Station
Yeah,
because he went through the door,
yeah, there was some very and this year was
right?
dominated by elections. It
This
seems.
has been a dominating elections here, and that is one of many. Um, I don't know of Mr. Mingo's illness or not, but that just looked like a movie dramatics because the paramedics was there before he even complained. So somewhere along the line,
They knew that he was gonna
they
get
they,
sick.
they didn't they directed and write the script accordingly, and the actors play it out before. And again, I am not saying that we all can't be ill. I have great tolerance for any person with any illness, but that was a director's script went wrong because the paramedics was there before the call was made.
But there were some very good things that came out this year too, Riaz, that we
Good.
didn't had a chance to discuss. One of the things that really had me sitting up and take notice was how some judges, the court system would have worked this year. While you would have had some questions going on to how the appeals court would have worked, I must say that there was deep admiration for Roxanne George, Madam Justice, Chief Justice Acton, Madam
Yes.
George. Of course, you would have seen the functions of the Caribbean Court of Justice. These are some of the big stories this year
Big
because
stories
they were
and
tested.
big stories,
They were
big stories
tested.
indeed. They were all tested, and in honest opinion, I don't ever. But of course, we had to do it because um, we've all said this. That was a lot of court wasting, timings, and what we have seen, and this will be, you know, I think I mentioned this on your program, or I've tell this story to many persons. I'll repeat it in 30 seconds. My uncle and uncles and my dad, we've argued. I've argued with them. Stories of the 60s. I said that day will never come. We're a modern society. It's not going to happen. Lo and behold, in 2020, I've seen the 60s unfolded in my eyes. It gives me great amount of much more respect for the ancestors of the 60s and the struggles, because my dad told me, for you to get a story, if you're living in Berbice or Essequibo or wherever, the Guyana Chronicle or to get it published, if you speak against the government at that time, that story would never published.
Yeah, there was one that there was a Guyana Chronicle, and in my days they used to had I think it was a Mero.
Yes, but my dad used to give
Right.
me some stories of himself and Adam Harris. They were working together at Rose Hall Estate before Adam got into media and my dad.
Yeah.
So I heard some stories
About Adam Harris.
about Dad and Adam. Let's put it that way. Let's just leave it that way. But but stories of that time that, you know, it gives me great amount of admiration for people deceased or still alive, right, who would have experienced that era, because we literally experienced the era with a Facebook Live, a Instagram Live, cameras galore. We have experienced
Everybody,
that.
yes. And what Riaz is saying is so very, very true. Everybody became a reporter. A social media, I think,
Oh
was
yes,
tested to the limits.
and I think not only the senior and I when I say the word senior journalists attached to a media house, let's use the word journalists attached to a media house, not only them should have been given credit during this era, in this year, but I think the social activists, the individuals, who
Some
would have
young
speaked
politicians,
out,
young
young
activists.
politicians, and a few names would have stand out: Dr. Josh Kanai, Shaz
Shaz,
Ali,
right. Brian Max
Dr.
too. Brian Max. and
Brian
his-
Max,
Raj.
Dr. What's her name? She was with Anog. She's with Anog or
Asha Kissoon.
Asha Kissoon.
Yes.
There was another guy who was Josh's presidential candidate. I can't remember his name. Another great
Yeah,
initiative.
but yeah, you can't forget. Don't forget Jonas, Timothy Jonas.
No, no,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
so much names.
Yeah, yeah,
Don't
you
get me
can-
wrong.
right,
There are
right.
lots of names, and if please, I'm not, trying to take the spotlight of anyone, but just a few that I'll remember. What I have to give great amount of admiration and great amount of credits for this year is the team that stand up, rain, moonlight, in the sunlight.
There's
And
Gardens of the
Garden
Mountains.
of the Ballot Box team.
Right,
That's where it started. They're too much. I don't want to go down names in this case because some might listen and I may. But credits will be given to Guyanese. Credits will be given to Caribbean nationals. I know people who are not Guyanese that went out there, Gildarie.
No, I can
All
tell
right.
you. I tell you, there was a couple of overseas people.
Yes.
We had a Mr. Ford. We
Yes.
had a Paul Tennessee.
Yep.
Yog. Let me tell you this. Yog and
Yes,
myself, I was
Dr.
here.
Ford is the name
Right,
of someone is telling
right.
me here. Yes,
You,
Dr. Ford.
You would have had Yog. Let me tell you this. Yog surprised me a lot.
Attorney Senior Counsel Jonas was arrested.
Today.
No, as in during that period. I know he went to the station sometime.
Yeah, there was
Someone
a
is
lot of things,
commenting on a comment here.
right,
like
right.
there's so much of unfold that I've
Right, right. But Yog would have been, I think that was one of the highlights. I mean, when we started and Yog and I had some initial discussion, and he says, look, in addition to what we do in daytime, could we do a nighttime show? And I said, are you crazy? You want to split me apart right now? And he said, no, we have to do it. And so I said, okay, but you would take the lead on that. And that's how Yog with the room 592, and I was trying to figure out the room 592 where it came from, or 592
Well, I
is
guess
the
the
Guyana code.
592 assumably being
is the
Guyana's country code,
So,
and it's
so
a
it's room
discussion
592.
that goes
but
by
but
in
the,
it,
the yoke came out, and I think we had something, and it was a fantastic thing. But 2020 was a year
challenging year, a
characterized,
very
but,
challenging
yeah,
year.
I think it was overshadowed by the elections, and I think it even overshadowed the COVID-19, which at the end, the rightful attention was started to be placed on that. What we could also talk about, I remember one story that really stuck in my mind. A guy named Joshua Edward. You know the name?
I know
Joshua Edward was this little guy that was going to UG and decided to sell pizza.
Yes.
I had him in the program here, and I think that thing stuck in my head that this little guy, he's going to do something that's honest. He wanted to go to UG, did not have the tuition, and he decided to sell pizza, homemade pizza, to make it. So those were a couple
a
of
lot
stories that
of
really
a lot
dragged
of
us
a
through.
lot of COVID have came and slowed a lot of things up, but it has opened up a lot of different avenues for,
Yeah,
for all the
delivery
business.
services.
Yes, it's given people, but it has also given people. This year has given you the respect for the simple things. I may sound a bit harsh to say this because I'll still say it. I think the world had needed something to let us retract. I'm not saying that we should have gotten COVID, but let us just to understand that you know what? You plan and I plan and we want to go all over the world. But God Almighty at the end of the day is the best planner of it. Yeah, the amount of personal plans that I had for 2020, Leonard. So many weddings across many seas, right? But what happened to it all? Caribbean Airlines, American Airlines owe me some
Everybody
money
is
right
running
now. I still wait. Well, I never approached them for the money. They've sent me back an email, tell me, hey, they got your ticket whenever you're ready. But God Almighty is the best planner. And this is why I've been very optimistic for so far. And I've said this every day through COVID and through the biggest virus for Guyana elections. At the end of the tunnel, there will be a bright light. Never give up in hope and never give up in something that you believe in. It may take years. It will take a long time. For us, in elections took 5.5 or 5.25 months. But the right prevail at the end of the day.
I want to ask you, I know I'm cutting into your show. I
No,
want
we're
to
not
ask you,
into my show. We're into our
Very good,
starts.
very good.
We're
So
not
guess what
into
we're
it.
gonna do? Because
We-
it's Christmas,
yeah,
it's a
we're
Christmas
not.
season. It's Old Year's Day, and we want to let us talk to our people a little. We're gonna read some messages. I know there are tons of messages there. So we were going through. You tuned into the Wake Up Guyana show. We're going through the end of year review. Some of the big stories that
Yeah,
made the news.
my brother in
Yeah.
Canada tell me, not fret, not fret.
Uh-huh.
New year will come.
The new
Not
year will
fret.
come.
Well, I would have been probably with my brother in Canada today.
Very good. So Henry Boys, elections 2020, COVID-19, racism, land controversy, the behavior of our politicians, protests at Marriott. I can remember the President David Granger was there, and then all of a sudden the congregation, part of the congregation, they were part of the gathering, got up and we started waving placard. Very unusual situation.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
was
I was there, and so I could
that was
remember.
it.
I think here Finale, Peter Ramsroop, a couple of the guys, frontline workers of the year. Let me tell it to you. Right about now on the studio here, we would have to give some the people of the year, or maybe persons of the year, and let you and I have some discussion before we open these lines here. There was a couple of people that really stood up, and there are many people who would have accused Claudette Singh
Yeah.
of being one way or the other. But when the 11th hour came and a decision had to be made, Claudette Singh stood tall.
Indeed. Let's read a message.
I would say, and this is going to be very controversial, as one of my top people, if I would have to say, for the person of the year, for the justification, from the justification
Controversial
perspective.
Gildarie speaks.
Right. From the justification perspective, that Claudette Singh would be one of the person that I would say is a person of the year for me, is a person, because there's a couple of them that really stood tall. There's a couple of others. Of course, I think the Brian Maxes would come to mind with his feeding of the people. Those youth gatherings, those young politicians who would have been gathered, and young activists who would have been gathered in front of the ballot boxes where it was stored at the GCOM headquarters there in the Kingston area. I want to say that those were some of the people of the year. Of course, on the flip side of things, the COVID-19, the emergency workers, the doctors, the nurses, the ambulance drivers, the cleaners, everybody, the Ministry of Health people, with very little resources in a country that had to throw resources in this area, managing it where we're at. Some people would say we did a little better than a lot of other countries. So I would want to say the people of the year, for me, I'd have two sets.
Two sets.
Those activists, those young activists who would have been around the guardians of so-called democracy, or the guardians of the democracy, the so-called. I would want to say they're one set of people. I would say they're the people of the year for me. And of course, our frontline workers, our health workers during the COVID-19. So three sets, that they would be Claudette Singh, which stood tall. There's a lot of controversy would be surrounding her. But I think when it really matters most, she stood tall.
Stood
A
tall.
lot of criticisms would have been on her. The guardians of democracy, and of course our
see.
frontline workers.
I see.
Over to you.
I see my dad have three names: Dr. Joshua Kanai, Says Gunraj, and Brian Max.
Well, Says is another one that really shocked me.
Yeah.
I was looking at him, and when everybody was still, when everybody was quiet, except me and Yog,
We've seen.
Says was talking a lot.
Yes, we've seen Mr. Gunraj, who I've known for a very good, decent amount of years, brought forward his law intellect, brought forward his street sense, and brought forward his professionalism and voice his opinion during that elections.
Yeah, of
that's
course.
That's how I will assess Sace in this case. Brian Max was Brian Max. He want to pick up a piece of wood and lash somebody, or he did it out of his great kindness
I think
of
he
his
was
heart.
representative. I think he was
Right.
representative of some of the agitation that we were seeing.
Yeah,
And that
but-
from that perspective.
Yeah, but he was an outspoken individual altogether. He was an outspoken individual. There's no doubt about that. But at the end of the day, There are many, and I may not narrow it down like how my dad and yourself narrow.
There was
it
one
down
other
today.
person that really struck me, and it's strange, huh? Anil. Anil with his fightings in the case.
Well,
He's always been ahead of the pack, but this
Adele
particular
is
year,
on a
right,
next level.
right.
You know, if you put some filly in a race and you put a veteran horse to run race, what's gonna happen? The biggest part of TikTok out of Anil's was when he him and the media, and
Oh,
there's a trend in TikTok
Yes, yes.
of Anil, an individual, a friend of mine that replayed this Anil Nandalal,
My
the
friend?
Honorable Attorney General's
Yes, my friend.
style.
Yeah.
My friend. Learned it, friend. You have already been baffled a very long time. You've been baffled since
A
yesterday.
very baffling statement.
Yes,
here,
right? But I gotta say hi to Zena and Shazad in Canada. They say that we don't fret today. We ain't fretting. We discussing today. We discussing today. I'm seeing a lot of comments. I was trying to go to read some, but I've missed it. Mingo, man of the year.
Well, if you had to give some, okay, let's give some honors. Well, I won't say honors. Let's give some awards. You know, in America,
Best actor in a dramatic role.
Clement
goes
Mingo.
To Clement Mingo.
he has won it hands down.
Hands down on that. There's no doubt about
The
that.
best cost board would go
Best
to
cost board.
Paula Lawrence in the Ashman's building there.
The Ashman's
Cossing out.
building.
Right.
Cross out from Harry Wrong to Harry Right.
The best supporting team actors would have been the
Best-
Lampy Pampy team. All right, this is a very serious show here. Let's let us get very serious. Here.
Yeah. What about best dress GCOM staff?
You got me there, my friend.
Best dressed GCOM commissioner. Says Gunraj by the man give compliments to his wife on social media. She presses his shirt and tie every day to go to.
I'd have to reach out back to him, but let me
Yes,
tell you this.
he
You
did.
know-
He said that. I can't remember his wife's name, but he said that on a status sometime. So Sayes was best dressed commissioner.
Another one of the person that really impressed me was Sanjeev Datta, an attorney at law. When it comes to, I'm not sure, but Sanjeev was one of them that really stood out. If you're going to give bad awards, I think we did
Yep.
give to the Volley Lawrence
Yeah, we
and
will.
to the Lampy
Harry,
Pampy duo.
Harry Prasad is nominating Mingo Lewinfield Myers for Person of the Year, along with Alexander Trotman and Corbin. So Harry, I would like to know your thing. Sharon as the yes man of
There was
play.
there's a lady that really impressed me even until this day here.
Joe
always-
Jaglal. Good afternoon, Joe.
Rhonda Lamb, Miss Rhonda Lamb. Now Rhonda would have, and I know that she's struggling right now. Very strong woman, fantastic woman. When it comes, she would have had a personal tragedy in her family there. Rhonda, we've always said that you have our support and we really love you. But Rhonda Lamb would have been one of them that would have been very outspoken, very much on social media, and it was one of the heroes or one of the persons that really came out big way.
Yep,
When we talk about the young team, the young politicians, the young activists who would be forces to probably reckon with in the years to come. I'm thinking that they are going to be wrong, and she is one of them that really did impress me a lot.
So
Sanjeev
what
is another one.
what gift would you give Basil?
Oh, Basil and the chief elections officer.
Uh-huh.
The chief
Giving them
elections
both of them
officer.
a gift together.
Yeah, both
What are
of
you
them,
giving them?
I think, would fall under the same category in my books. And the category is that they don't know much. Whenever you keep asking them something, it's either they're losing or something is happening. So I'm not sure what kind of
I liking how these comments are coming in through.
Right,
Supporting
right.
role, the blow team headed by 007. Horace, who is the Clung of the Year? Shelley would like to know that. Who we giving Clung of the Year? That's a tough one. They get a lot of people running for that award right now, girl. I would want to think so. I would want to think so.
Being where we are at a respectable
Radio network.
radio network here, we
Yeah.
don't want to call people clown. We're gonna make something, but clown is a thing.
Well, we could call. Well, we can put it as clown. We could put it as What's this? What's weird? Yo, Prince, what do you call the What do you call McDonald's? Man, what do you call it again? Prince, help me out there, my brother. Help me out. What do you call the man there, man? Man always dressed up in the suit Shazad. What do you call him from McDonald's? What do you call him? Donald? It's not Donald? Prince, help me out. Help me out.
Don't know. But guess what? We are at this point in time. You know, you should do the honors. Do we have any caller? Let's open the lines. 226-7453. Do we have a caller in line? Let's see some of our people calling. And we have until 4 o'clock, about half an hour, to push in those calls. I'm going to read some things to you guys, too. Some people here, let me see. Bar Jagdir says, Nanlal. Good afternoon. Okay, good. Let me see what else. What do people do? We have a caller
Ronald McDonald. The
Ronald
Ronald McDonald Award will be who this year? Thank you, Prince. Thank you.
Mr. Gildarie, tonight will be a horrible night in Escab with all those firecrackers. Right now it's selling like hot cake in Anna Regina. To the commander of police in Anna Regina there, what's happening with the firecrackers? Get your act together there, police. The people are saying that the firecrackers are all the way wrong, and I think this year, even there's never been a crackdown. Even my family got upset with me that I'm cracking down on firecrackers. But we gotta get it. We gotta get this thing right. You know, it's illegal. It's illegal. Full stop. I cannot sit here and tell anybody to do anything that is going to be breaking the laws or put our animals on the stress. Yes.
Senior Counsel.
Who's that for Senior
Douglas
Counsel?
Mendez.
Okay.
Is up for an award as Man of the Year as well.
Yeah, they had some
Played.
they had some people that really stood head and shoulders. Mr. Gildarie, what about the people that guarded the containers with the ballot box? I think that's significant. This is not what we expect from Mr. Glenn Lal of the last day of the year. He had his own program for this man, so monotonous. Mr. Lal needs to understand that the management of the economy is more complex than all the business. Mr. Glenn Lal has a need to educate himself and be more informed. Thank you very much. You know, you must have different kind of thing. We in the last day of the year just felt I should thank you. I should thank everyone who made me smile this year. You're one of them. Thank you very much. Do we have a caller online? Good afternoon, caller. You're on the air. Go right ahead. In the last day of the year, just felt I should thank Hello. Could you turn down your radio, please? Turn down your radio right away, please.
Hello?
Take off
Yes,
your radio
take
right
your
away,
radio off.
please.
Take your
Take your
radio
radio off.
I'm calling from St. Kitts.
Yes, could you take off your radio, please? Or your television, whatever it is that you have on?
Out.
We having a feedback. I'm
Hello?
not sure why we having a feedback. Something is on.
Hello?
Yes, you're on to the Kaieteur radio, to the Wake Up Guyana show. Go right ahead, sir.
I have a question. I don't know if I just came in my house and I have a question.
Sure.
I heard Mr. Glenn was speaking a while ago, a couple of minutes ago,
Yes.
and he was saying something about the signing of the Isle Agreement.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm calling from St. Kitts. I want to know where Mr. Glenn was when the coalition was signing those agreements. Because I was watching.
No, ask
Mr.
the question.
Glenn,
Ask the question. I would answer it. He's not here, but ask the question. Where was he?
Oh.
Okay, what else?
Because a few days ago, I was listening to him also talking with Barra Jagdale, and a lot of pressure was going to Jagdale, but I don't know where he was then when they were signing this contract.
Well, if you were following Kaieteur News, I could answer you this way. If you were following the Kaieteur News, of which I'm part of, I could recall that this newspaper started since in 2015 on this oil business, when it started coming out, and it became... We were the one who broke the details of that deal when they signed it and all the details with it. We were talking about it since 2016, 2015.
Oh, I actually follow you guys during the election.
Yes, sir.
That's when I started to follow you guys. You and Leo Mahagbeer and
Yes, sir.
folks like things. So I'm just questioning myself because I never heard about it before, and I heard
Yes.
about this fake deal
We,
going on with the gas
we
thing and
were
all kind of stuff.
we
So,
were since 2016
uh-huh.
very I think the newspaper, when I say we, the newspaper was very prolific in its reporting of the
Hmm.
oil deal and everything that was happening, that we could reach a point where the situation is at this moment here. Everything that,
And
yes.
okay, I heard you guys giving award to persons that I think need the award for the year, but I think the former Attorney General and I can't remember this girl name who was lying to the whole OCS and what her name was. I can't remember her name. I think those two persons need award or something like that for
Right,
lying to the
we
whole
calling
entire
them for
world.
recognition. So it is. We have given. We believe. My personal view was Claudette Singh as a chairperson for standing up when it really mattered. There's going to be controversy over that. I think the guardians of democracy who guarded those containers, I think those people need
Uh-huh.
award too. Of course, says Gunraj, Sanjeev Datadin, and Anand Lal. And of course, the frontline workers, the health workers, I think they did a fantastic job this year. So those are people
Well,
that we are recognizing.
I think Madam Roxanne George acting. I think she need a award too because she did a tremendous job in the court story.
No, I agree with you, and I'm sorry I really missed that. That was a woman that really had Guyana sitting up and ruled without fear, without fear.
Uh huh.
And that was something very, very good for the High Court and for the
I,
judicial system.
I was listening. I was listening to one of the court story when she told the then government that do not come back with nonsense in the court and them kind of stuff. So I think she need a watch. Right.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for coming
I
through.
have a good day, man.
Good, buddy.
Yeah, man. Thank you very much, my brother.
We get some awards real shared out here.
Yeah.
Match
So,
Genius of the Year, APNU, Mr. Hussein. This one is an interesting one. Disappearing Act Award, Nagas.
from
Nowhere to be
as the
seen,
former Prime Minister
nowhere
Moses
to be
Nagamutu,
seen or heard
the
from
Spear Act.
since.
Okay.
Disappearing Act Award. Intaz Mohammed presenting that to him. Minister of the Dead. Who you giving that one to? I don't get the name. It's in the comment.
I don't know. You want me to get
Minister,
myself in trouble?
no.
I have a publisher,
Minister of the Dead went to Annette because Annette went to the funeral and was
Or there
telling
was a
them if
minister of death and say there's a many
no,
people
no,
that
there were, no,
voted.
no. She was at that time minister. She went through the burial ground and she was telling them.
What do you give Cathy Hughes, Miss Cathy Hughes, Minister,
Miss
former
Cathy
Minister? Miss
Hughes.
Cathy Hughes,
Miss Cathy Hughes needs a new phone, Bill. New phone probably from Sprint or T-Mobile or something because she sat there, had the opportunity to be a winner of opening the Telecommunications Act, of which they were blocking in the previous administration when the bill was going to go forward. However, not throwing it back again. That act did open now. Telecommunications Act was opened only a few months ago because a lot of people don't understand when we say a Telecommunications Act open what it simply means. It simply means better service for all of us, and we've already seen that within two companies in Guyana. One of your number one favorite company started to do decently better service. This entire Christmas season, I've got text. I'm sure everyone got it. Messages telling you about this promotion, double data, and all of these things, of which we weren't getting back in those days. But it opens play field and market, and it opens opportunity for Guyanese to benefit more and company to provide better service. Because we've seen the rising of e-networks, and they've been expanding every day. Gives GT&T DSL or their Blaze a real lot of hitting. All right? If you start driving around, you'll see those e-networks boxes around. Affordable, reliable. There will be issues, I'm sure.
Well, let me see. Well,
Right.
one person here has Cathy Hughes, the Missing Russian Award. I am not subscribing to anything that is going to be scandalous here. I could only read it out here. But I
The
mean,
Missing
you guys are
Russian
really,
Award.
Unbelievable here, man. But it is the Wake Up Guyana show. It's the last day of the year. Within a few hours, we are going to be entering a brand new year, 2021. What is it that we expect from them? What is it that we should be doing in the new year? What can we expect of government? Do we have a call online? Good afternoon, caller. You on the air. Go right ahead. Hello.
Hi, good afternoon, Leonard.
Good afternoon, my
And
dear.
good
How are you doing?
afternoon to Riaz. Yeah, let's make me laugh so much. And I just learn a lot of things
Oh,
from
you
you
learn a
all.
lot.
Yes, I just learn a lot from y'all. And, but the same firecrackers, Leonard,
Yes.
I did surgery for breast cancer, right?
Yes.
And the doctor told me the chemo kill out my nerve because I get getting mad.
Uh-huh.
And when they just go off them thing, this I just really get, well, I don't know the word to say. I don't like it. I can't hear it.
Right.
But people don't hear because one time my neighbor they going off it and when I tell them like they're vexed. But nobody knows who is go through, and I might sick now and then you might sick tomorrow.
Yes,
But
yes.
we should all think about
Uh-huh.
live in good and do things for one another. And I don't like them. I can't hear it.
No problem, ma'am. So I hope that
And I see
the
a
new
lot of
year.
them selling, man. I don't know why they don't ban these things.
Well, I did talk to the police, one of the police commander, and this says on the East Bank, especially that he's cracking down on it. I did pass on the Diamond Access Road this morning, and I didn't see any selling. So it seems certain parts, but other parts of the country, they have opened it up. So nobody's paying.
Yesterday I went to clinic,
Uh-huh.
and in the market, if you see how much all kind you're seeing. I said, God, these people, I'm not going to stop with this thing, man. Then the animals, them. I had a cat last year. I can't find him in the way gone and hide.
All right.
When they going to go off, all them things going to get away again.
I hear what you're saying, ma'am. So I want to wish you all the best for the rest of the year. And, of course, for the new year, I hope it brings better things for you, all right?
Yes, and I wish you the same too. God bless you, and you must always be successful and Riaz.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much, sir, ma'am.
Okay, bye-bye.
Who do you give the best community service award to?
I have absolutely no idea.
It's not an easy road. There's a clue for you.
Okay, it's Bujubanton. Who gave out
No,
Bujubanton
we're
ticket?
giving it to... I mean, one call his name. We give it out to Fishmouth.
You
He just
guys
left us
wicked.
down.
You guys being wicked. If you had to give a Caribbean leader,
Maya Mortley.
Maya Mortley.
I
was,
didn't know what you're
Motley.
talking about, but
Yeah,
Motley, Maya
Caribbean
Motley.
leader, right.
Miss Motley,
What about Owen Arthur? He was here.
I was
very
I
upset.
was
And
I
even
was getting- I was
this guy
the late
here.
Owen Arthur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This guy from not Saint Kitts, I think from
Gonzalez.
Gonzalez, Mr. Ralph Gonzalez.
Gonzalez.
We had three Caribbean leaders that really stood tall. Like Mia Motley was somebody.
And you have to give credits also to the current and then, because you won the elections, Prime Minister who's now the chair for CARICOM.
Yes.
Of Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah, and they were very
Right?
careful. But Mia Motley with
You
her
see,
lovely speech.
I think what Trinidad was doing, Trinidad was playing it in a very safe environment because Trinidad's politics is even more dirty than Guyana. And I say that by no means of an attack to Trinidad, who I have great respect and great amount of friends, but it's my friends who is in the media tells me the same thing. The Trinidad politics is much more dirty. And if we think that racism is in Guyana, don't stifle the conscience that it's very dominant in Trinidad. What is more dominant across there that I hope, pray, and beg that never reaches to Guyana is extremist gang war. And we saw that a few months ago in Trinidad with all these fires and burnings and gang up all together. And sad to say that I'll say this, that's that the big Islamic terrorist gangs, and these are act to condemn, and these are things that Caribbean nation and nations like Guyana ought to open eyes on, given the turning point for the better where we are standing at the moment in Guyana. A sad, gruesome incident occurred with a Cuban national a couple of days ago who've confessed We don't want elements like that of these major crimes, syndicated crimes that happens in Trinidad to get across in Guyana. We're too small for that, despite we're bigger than Trinidad. So at that time, I think the Prime Minister of Trinidad was playing it very safe, but yet he was vocal and standing up for what was right and what is right.
So a very important year, a very tough year. It's a year that everybody would want to forget because of not only the COVID-19 and the horrors that it brought, but because of the elections 2020 and what Guyana would have gone through. 5 months, very dark period in our history. That we would want to see written in the history books, but we would want to not to have a repeat. And of course, there were some very bright spots that came forward that we would have seen some people rise to the occasion. We would have seen the COVID-19 health workers sacrifice and making those fantastic, sacrifices so they could be able to, even giving up time with the family so they could be able to provide those services that was demanded in a time with Guyana having very little clue, learning what the COVID-19 was all about. Of course, the role of the social media, the murder of the Henry boys, racism raised its head. The quality of our politicians was something that we would have had look into. And of course, Irfan Ali, one of the things, Riaz, that I paid attention to, as we have a couple more minutes to wrap up very quickly, one of the things that I paid attention to was Irfan Ali as the president of Guyana. There were a lot of eyebrows raised as a choice of Irfan Ali. We have to tackle this as to whether he had the experience and so on.
As you hold it right there, experience.
Experience.
I need, and I'll say this as before the president, His Excellency. But during the elections period, I've admired the leadership style, the leadership way of speaking from the then presidential candidate of the PPP. Because we were waiting for elections results. I saw him talk as a true leader at night at many occasions. One night when the incident started, when Lowenfield said that he wasn't getting a Region 4 counter, what do you the exact word, DRO, and everyone was a bit furious all to it. But I then saw now president, then presidential candidate, Dr. Ali, was very calm. He spoke as an ex-leader. He spoke as a true leader of the presidential candidate at that moment in time. And my dad and I saw this, and I admire that. He wasn't the aggressor. He have already started showing you that, hey, we will fix this. Let us take it one at a time. We will get over this. Today, I've seen a similar way of approach of dealing with people in society by the same then presidential candidate, now the president of Guyana. And that augurs well for society. You need, yes, I'm not saying that you be harsh, stand firm, but be respectful so that you get it in return from the people. That puts you there.
Yes, and I do thank you for that. And one of the things that would have struck me with the Irfan Ali led presidency in Guyana over the last couple months, and this is from a strictly critical point of view. I love the energy, Riaz, that would have been displayed by President Ali and his team of ministers, the cabinet, and they're fanned out all across the different regions and so on. So that's a very good thing. Are they going to be able to sustain it? On the flip side of that, I'm deeply worried. I would love to see, going into the new year, that the opposition play their role. They have a very critical role in the National Assembly. They have to turn up. They have to do their jobs. While they're waiting for other things that's going to happen, maybe elections petition or whatever it is. But they have to play their role.
I would
they have
like
a
to see a
responsibility.
strong opposition.
No, they have to look. Riaz, the figure says it very clearly.
If
217,000 persons they represent.
Yeah, if the current government, when in opposition, was not strong, things would have probably not swing in their favor. I need to see the opposition to be strong, be vocal, but don't be disrespecting women and cussing women out and expect someone like me in society and then go on Facebook and have honorable this behind your name. Nonsense.
Well, I hear what you're saying there.
All right?
So,
You need to understand, for you to gain respect, you must show respect. And if you cannot show respect to the public and ridiculing women in society, then I'm sorry, Leonard. If you do that, I'm sorry, I'll tell you straight too.
no, we have to be very
We
principled.
need to be principled, and I've seen that happen. I've seen that with some of the opposition, and that's again started my entire conversation that started here today. Worry to society, because if one see, the next one want to do.
Unfortunately, we have come to that point in time when we'd have to wrap up, because it's Old Year's Day, and many people, I know that you tuned in and you've been with us, listening to us. I hope that we've kept you informed. We would have discussed some of the stories that made the news this year in a big way. Of course, dominating it was the COVID-19 and elections 2020. We have talked about some of the other big stories at the side bars, if you will, that would have taken our attention. The performance of the government in those couple months that they've been in office, the performance of the utilities company, the economy, how it's doing, the frontline workers, schooling. I wish we had gone a little more into that, but that's a big issue. We have to come back to that. The behavior of the politicians, racism, the Henry Boyce murder, and of course you had one, two other shocking cases that would have been there. But this year has been characterized by a lot of things. Riaz, in closing, what are some of the things very quickly that you would like to see that this government, our government, do for next year?
I needed to fix the roads. That's for sure. That's on top priority. I fought in a pothole again the other night. I don't know, like I'm prone to these potholes. But work on that expansion. I know it was down the road 3 years or whatever it is, but I think we need to start working on expansions, and I think we need to start to
You're talking about the expansion of the road networks.
Yes.
Right.
And I think we need to fix the interlocked streets, of which I talked to you about already. Fix those streets in Alboystown and Charlestown, because we're using them quite often to try to evade the traffic. I will also like to see the oil sector open their eyes and understand that Guyanese need to be benefiting from that sector. And I will also like to let the government work more on health. That's very key. And health falls in line with education and security. So I sound like a politician today, man. But that's about it. But for us all to work to add to development, you cannot sit at home and think things will happen. You need to work, add something to society. And to the friends on Facebook who lives in Canada or the US, not attacking you, much respect to you, but you don't live here, you don't know the squeeze, don't go on social media and make the erroneous statements that you do on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you very much, dear W.R. Riaz. We've come to that time to wrap up on the Wake Up Guyana show. And let me just go back a little. Some of the things. This year has been, personally for me, has been a year of awakening. It has been a year where I started to see things a little differently. And if you know Gildarie from last year, I would not have been this outspoken. You would have heard me at the back of the room, very quiet. I like it to stay out of the spotlight. Unfortunately, sometimes we trust into situations that we have to change ourselves. We have to evolve. That's what life is all about. And so this year has really, it has been very good. You guys have been with us from day one, from March the 2nd, when we came downstairs here. I came upstairs and they were doing nothing. I dropped my bag and I said, you know what? I cannot move from this studio here until we start doing something. And that's how it all started. Yo came on board, and we had so many people. The journey throughout this year would have been something I will never ever forget. I have my phones ringing off the hook now that people that I've never met before. People would send us encouragement. People would send us a thumbs up. It meant a lot. I really do appreciate the little children from all over the place, little young ladies and young men. Yeah.
You feel like a celebrity then.
No, not really. But
Celebrity
it gives
of
us.
the year.
I'm not sure with that. I'm not
It's
sure
been-
with that.
I know that feeling.
I'm not sure what
I-
celebrity, but what I could tell
I
you,
know that
it,
feeling.
it when people, well, you see, when people give you the encouragement to do the things, although your body might ache, you get up and you go make sure that you do it all over again. So this year has been a very, very, very terrible year for us, but let's take away some
Hopeful and
positives.
grateful.
We
Yeah.
have become stronger as a people. We
Yep.
have learned a lot during this year. As we go forward into the new year, let's take some of these experiences and take it into the new year. I hope that we've been able, over the several, I've lost count of the number of shows that we would have had since March, but I hope that you've learned something. We've uplifted your spirits. We've made you aware. Always remember that the government doesn't owe you anything. What you do know is that you put them there and they're mandated to do something for you. They're mandated by the fact that you voted them there. They're your representative. They have to give you a good deal. They have to present the policies that is going to make this country into a better country. When they don't perform, you replace them. It's simple as that. Stand up. Do not sit down. We've been sitting down too long. We've been quiet too long, and we've been blaming every other person's except ourselves in raising the bar when this country is concerned.
It's
Glenn would have been telling
start
you,
from you.
we have so much barrels of oil here. We have so much wealth here. We have to demand that we want a fair share as we move forward in this country, as we go forward next year. I don't know what the next year holds. I'm very positive. I might not be here. I might be elsewhere. I don't know where the road is going to lead. What I do know is that we are all living here. We have to start fighting. We have to start being one people and start making sure that this country benefits and builds itself, and the potential that we're talking about has been realized. So as we go forward to next year, I'm hoping, my wish is that we become stronger, more vocal, and that whatever it is that we do is to our betterment, because this country belongs to us. It does not belong to anybody else. It's an honor to hold our passport. It's an honor to hold that ID card. It's an honor to vote. And it's an honor to sit down at any place and says, this is my country. It's our country. It's your country. One people, one nation, one destiny. Enjoy the rest of the year, and may next year bring you the things that we so rightly deserve. I can't say anything else except thank you, thank you, thank you, all our people in this country and wherever you are overseas. Enjoy the rest of the day, and next year we see you again within a few hours.